Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Allen. I'm the Ward 6 Council member and chair of the Council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment. Today is Monday, February 10th, 2025. We are meeting both in room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building and on the Zoom virtual platform. The time is now 9:33 a.m., and I'm calling to order this performance oversight hearing of the committee. During today's performance oversight hearing, the committee will be hearing from public and government witnesses regarding the Department of Motor Vehicles. The mission of the Department of Motor Vehicles, or the DMV, is to promote the safe operation of motor vehicles and public safety while providing outstanding customer service. Every day, the DMV serves an average of 3,200 district residents and non-residents, more than almost any district government agency. This performance oversight hearing will examine how the DMV is meeting and hopefully exceeding the needs and expectations of district residents and other regional drivers. I don't believe we have any colleagues that are here with us yet, but certainly expect that we'll have other members that are going to join us. Let me add a couple of comments about the format for today's hearing. We have public witnesses testifying on their own behalf, and those that are will have 3 minutes to testify. ANC commissioners or those testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes. If there are multiple witnesses testifying on behalf of the same organization, only the first witness will have the first full 5 minutes to testify, and other witnesses from the same organization then have 3 minutes. We'll be using a timer to keep up on the schedule, so please keep an eye out for that. For witnesses that are testifying in person, please take a seat at the table when your name is called. And for witnesses that are testifying virtually, you'll receive a prompt via Zoom to accept a promotion to be a panelist. After finishing your testimony, please remain at the table or online so that we can turn to questions for you afterwards. And for anyone who is interested in submitting testimony for the record, the committee will accept written testimony through the council's hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings, and the record will close on February 24th, 2025. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and call up all of our witnesses because I believe we have a mix of in-person and virtual, so where we could fit everybody onto one panel. If that doesn't work, we'll just make sure we have a second panel. But I have Joey Davis, president of AFGE Local 1975. Christina Lassiter, public witness. Yolanda Deloche, public witness. Larry Jameson, public witness. Tyrone Gibson, public witness. Shauna Delavue, CEO with Bright Lines. Jackie Wright, Social Justice Program Manager with Foundry United Methodist Church. Emmanuel Jackson, public witness. Thanks. Nancy Groth. And Ms. Groth, I know you are an ANC commissioner for 2C02. I wasn't sure. Are you testifying as commissioner or in your individual capacity? Got it. I will still, of course, address you as commissioner. But thank you very much. And then do we have Vernon McNeil who wanted to testify as well? Okay. Let's see. Mr. McNeil, how about if you want to come on up and sit right here? And then, Mr. Davis, if you don't mind, when it's time for Mr. McNeil, if you'll just slide over a little bit, that way he can pull up to the table. Does that work for you? Okay. And that should work out so that we've got everybody both in person and online, correct? Okay. All right, Mr. Davis, I've got you up first, so let me turn to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Allen, members of the committee, and fellow district residents. My name is Joey Davis, and I'm the president of AFGE Local 1975, representing the hardworking employees of the DC Department of Motor Vehicles, along with employees from DDOT, DPW, Department of For-Hire Vehicles, and MPD. Together, our over 1,200 members keep DC moving. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and bring attention to the growing concerns within our agency, which continue to negatively impact both employees and the residents we serve. The workplace culture at DMV has become increasingly hostile due to unfair labor practices, lack of transparency, and retaliatory management actions. Employees are routinely subjected to unfair corrective and adverse actions, with grievances being ignored or dismissed without good faith review. Management continuously refuses to engage in fair dispute resolution, often circumventing established labor protections, which has led to a significant erosion of trust between employees and agency leadership. One of the most troubling aspects of our current work environment is that employees are evaluated on transactions that many members of management themselves do not know how to complete. This disconnect between those setting the standards and those actually performing the work leads to arbitrary and unfair assessments, often placing employees at risk of unwarranted disciplinary actions. Instead of fostering an environment of professional growth, management has created a culture of fear, where employees are afraid to ask for guidance or clarification, especially those who are employed in a probationary nature. Further compounding this issue is the restrictive nature of workplace expectations. Employees are frequently told they cannot leave their desks during certain periods of time, even for short breaks, despite the demanding nature of their roles. This lack of flexibility and disregard for employee well-being directly contributes to declining morale and increased turnover amongst our staff. Additionally, the DMV claims to offer training to new employees, yet employees receive inconsistent or outdated information, especially at adjudication. This lack of proper instruction creates inefficiencies and increases the likelihood of errors. Yet employees are still held accountable for mistakes resulting from poor training. A well-trained workforce is essential to ensuring efficient service delivery to the public, but DMV leadership has repeatedly failed to provide the necessary resources. When we have raised these issues with them, they simply say they disagree, demonstrating their lack of interest in truly addressing these deficiencies. Additionally, for over a year, employees have been promised metal detectors to enhance security at DMV locations, both for employees and the general public, yet they have not materialized. Given the increasing concerns regarding workplace safety, this delay is unacceptable. Employees face threats and hostile interactions with the public on a daily basis, and without adequate security measures in place, it is only a matter of time before a serious incident occurs. The well-being and safety of DMV employees should be a top priority, and we call on leadership to fulfill their promise of installing these metal detectors and implementing additional security measures without further delay. We would also like to call your attention to the fact that over the past 3 years, DMV leadership has significantly increased overhead costs by adding more managerial and administrative positions. Despite this increase in staff at the top, the efficiency of the agency has not improved. Employees on the front lines continue to struggle with the same outdated processes, long customer wait times, and inconsistent managerial guidance. The additional layers of bureaucracy have only created more roadblocks instead of facilitating a smoother operation. DMV leadership must address this imbalance and focus on improvements that directly benefit employees and the residents they serve. For nearly 20 years, employees have been forced to work with an outdated database system known as Destiny. We continue to hear about Destiny 2.0, but there have been no meaningful updates, and employees are left struggling with an inefficient and unreliable system. This outdated technology slows down transactions, frustrates employees and residents, and ultimately hampers DMV operations. The combination of these challenges, hostile work conditions, ineffective training, unfair evaluations, lack of breaks, outdated systems, safety concerns, and bureaucratic efficiencies has devastated employee morale. Many dedicated workers who have served the district for years are seeking employment elsewhere, leaving the DMV with staffing shortages and an inexperienced workforce. I see my time has run, but let me just conclude with these issues I have outlined today are not new, but they remain unaddressed. The DMV cannot continue to function effectively if employees are not treated fairly, provided with necessary resources, or given the respect they deserve. We call on DC Council to hold DMV leadership accountable and ensure that real, meaningful changes are made. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Got it. Thank you very much. We will turn to questions once we get through everyone's testimony. Next up, I had Christina Lassiter. Ms. Lassiter, okay. let's see. We might have a little challenge here at the table. Mr. Davis, how about this? If you wouldn't mind, would you slide off so we'll let Ms. Lassiter come up? There we go. All right. Good morning, Ms. Lassiter. And if you'll hit the button so the red light comes on, and then when you're ready.
Yes. Can you hear me? Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Lassiter, formerly known and employed at the DC DMV as Christina Green. I was employed with the DMV for 5 years. I proudly served my agency and community, working with integrity and dedication. I stand before you today to testify about the unsafe, toxic, and hostile work culture that upper officials have incorporated within the DC DMV. On May 6, 2024, I was wrongfully terminated, not based on facts or proof, but purely on hearsay. I was terminated because I have months' worth of documented complaints to management, emails detailing serious workplace concerns that were ignored. I was terminated because I chose to speak up for myself and others who were forced to work in a hostile environment, an environment repeatedly created by the same employee. So I ask, how does an employee who has been placed on administrative leave 4 times within a year and a half for misconduct still hold a position at the DC DMV while I terminated without hesitation? This selective enforcement of policy suggests that Director Gabriel and his management team apply rules inconsistently, protecting some while punishing others. Employees at the DC DMV face immense pressure to meet quotas and enforce new customer policies. Yet management routinely ignores its own rules while dealing with internal misconduct. Those who create a hostile work environment remain employed, while those who speak out against unfair conditions are silenced with termination. I'm here today to call for a formal investigation into DC DMV policies, procedures, and leadership. I'm not the only one who faced this issue. Many employees have endured similar mistreatment only to be met with wrongful termination. Despite mandatory workplace trainings on mental health, mental wellness, hostile and toxic work environment, and de-escalation training, management fails to apply these principles. When I took those trainings, I took those seriously and spoke out of fairness. I lost my job. This decision didn't impact me. It affected my family, my children, and those who depended upon me. DC DMV has fostered a culture where employees fear retaliation for speaking up. It is unfair and unjust that someone with a history of misconduct remains employed, while those who uphold integrity are removed. I urge you to investigate these ongoing issues and hold DC DMV leadership accountable. Employees deserve a safe and just workplace, one where concerns are taken seriously and not ignored or punished.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lassiter. And if you're able to stay here, we'll have some questions when we come back through everybody's testimony.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Next, I have Yolanda Deloche. Oh, okay, Ms. Deloche.
Good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Yolanda Deloche. It has become increasingly clear that the DMV is failing to apply its policy, leaders in unfair treatment of employees, and lack of accountability to respect offenders. While some employees are disciplined or even terminated for infractions, others are allowed to violate policies without no consequences. The select enforcement not only create a toxic work environment, but also undermine trust in the agency leadership. I served at the DMV for 33 years, dedication, integrity, always striving to provide service to the public and uphold professional standards. Yet, because of the DMV refused to adhere to its own policy and procedures, I am now facing a threat of termination while defending myself against a accountability. Instead of addressing the agency targeting me, someone who has given decades of service, while all others respectfully violated policy without consequences. This situation has highlighted a deeper issue within the DMV. When employees who mistreat both colleagues, supervisors, and the public protect while those are seeking fairness and policies are punished. This fails to uphold workplace standards, fairly not fostered among employees, but always jeopardize the integrity of the DMV professionalism. The agency must take immediately steps to ensure that employees to be held at the standard conduct. Also, I would like to say that this colleague history of workplace misconduct extend beyond interactions with me. They have been represented by the union multiple times. Confronting attitudes even lead to DMV to remove them from the public duties and relocate them upstairs to avoid future incidents with customers. Despite repeatedly infractions, the agency has to continue to protect instead of enforcing its policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, actually, if you'll just stay right there for a second.
Sure.
What I might do here, I think I've got Larry Jameson who's online. So what I might do is this, if you wouldn't mind, so that we can kind of have the panel of folks. I don't like the folks having to sit at the table, come back. So if I
Okay.
can, you stay right there, please. I'm gonna have Larry Jameson testify here. And then if I could actually ask Mr. Davis and Ms. Lassiter just to come back up. And what I'll do is break up the panel essentially. So I'll kind of do questions after I think Mr. Jameson testifies. And then we'll do questions and then I'll bring the rest of our panelists back up for
Okay.
their testimony. Because
Okay.
it feels like based on what I'm seeing, there might be two separate sets of issues and I want to make
Okay.
sure we spend time on this.
Okay.
All right. So Mr. Jameson, I think you're joining us online. Are you there? Mr. Jameson, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We're ready for your
Okay.
testimony. If you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Larry Jameson. I am a DC resident, served in the district, well, as a mechanic all my life. Me and my family, we had 3 decades of being mechanics. I was hired in August of 2022 to become a vehicle inspector. I did not receive any training as I should have at the time when my 2 colleagues received the inspection training. Mind you, I was a vehicle inspector in the 80s under the Berry administration. I served as a vehicle inspector, but I was only put out in the lane for traffic service. I was not only put in traffic service, I was threatened by an employee who threatened to beat me up and do whatever he was going to do. There was no management did not address that issue whatsoever. And I was terminated after I filed an EEOC complaint. I was terminated. I filed in December 2022. I was terminated January 2022. My lawyer and I have been trying to reach management for answers. We haven't got anything from DMV whatsoever. Hello?
Yes, Mr.
Can
Jameson.
you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just want to
Okay,
make sure.
yes. Okay.
Okay,
I filed EEOC with the federal as well as the city, and we have not gotten an answer as to what's going on. There was no disciplinary action on my behalf. There was no time and attendance issues. It was when I filed the EEOC complaint, I was terminated a month later.
got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jameson. So what I'm going to do
Okay.
so hang in there just for a second. I'm going to go ahead and kind of turn to some questions for this panel. So first off,
Sure.
thank you everybody for your testimony. Mr. Davis, let me start with you if I can. You know, you talked about management not engaging in terms of issues that the union is trying to bring forward on behalf of employees. Where are we in terms of our current contract? Are we in negotiations? In other words, is our management and labor in negotiations on a current contract, or when does the existing contract expire?
So we have, there's two contracts, the comp 1 and 2, those negotiations are ongoing and that's salary wise. Our working conditions contract, the version that we work with now actually expired in 2010. We have no plans to renegotiate that contract because as you know, when you negotiate something, you have to give something up to get something. And there's very little left for us to give up.
Okay, so we have so you said you have two contracts. One expired in 2010.
Right, that's the working conditions. That's where grievances and so forth come from.
Okay. And the other one?
The other one is the comp 1 and 2 contract, which deals with cost of living, wages, and all those things. That's under negotiation right now.
When does it expire?
It expires at the end of September.
Of this year?
Yes.
Okay. So in the agency's responses, when we asked about, is the agency currently in bargaining and its anticipated completion date, the response we got back was not currently in bargaining.
So that the agency doesn't handle it. Let me be clear. That's done through the executive office of the mayor
Got it.
and OLRCB.
Okay, all right, that's a helpful distinction. And that's on the comp one. All right, so if the concern that I heard cited, not just from yourself, but from others, had to do with what I would kind of categorize as working conditions, why not enter into some form of negotiations if you feel like the current structure is not working for your employees and for your members?
So it isn't that we don't have protections or provisions within the contract that apply. It's that there is no good faith effort on behalf of the agency to be held accountable to them. So essentially, we have two parties to a contract and the union and its employees are held accountable on a regular basis. But there really is no accountability for the agency short of an unfair labor practice in certain situations to really enforce any of those mechanisms in there.
Okay, so from your perspective as the labor leadership, you feel like you have an agreement, you have a contract that should be outlining and dictating standards and accountability go in both directions.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. To Ms. Lassiter, so I was trying to follow your testimony on this here. So you were terminated in May of 2024?
Correct.
Okay. And were you represented through AFGE?
I was represented through AFGE, but a decision was already pre-made. Once the proposal for termination was given to me, again, the decision was already pre-made. To piggyback off of what Joey Davis said, management doesn't hold that contract to its full accountability. To have a de-escalation situation, they just move straight in for termination. For an employee like myself, I've never been written up. I never had any bad end of the year goals, anything of that nature. And to come with termination for the first thing on the table, your mind is already made up. And then again, we have a system within the DC DMV that once a proposal is proposed to an employee, it's an internal investigation, which is very biased because I feel as though the agency or employee should not handle the situation directly at hand because you already know the employees and you already biased when it comes to handling a situation. If I'm given a proposal for termination, I've been working there for 5 years versus someone who's been working there 20 years, who have worked in all branches of the DMV. That person knows pretty much everybody that works in the DMV. So that person who is reviewing my case or reviewing the facts of the case, mine is already made up to initially terminate the person with the lesser service of years because they know the person that's been there longer than me.
Okay. Did you have, or did you exercise an appeals process to the
I
termination
did.
decision?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
And can you describe that for us to what you're allowed to share about it, just so we
Yes.
understand it?
So once I was given the option to exercise the appeal, it was sent down to adjudication, which is another part of the DC DMV. And all of the paperwork is the same exact wording, literally. It was no formal investigation done. It was no video proof. It was based all on hearsay. That was the facts of their case, hearsay. That's it, that's all. Them taking 2 employee words over mine, an incident that occurred in the restroom. And that's just what the investigation say. Through each report that I received from the adjudicator, from the director Gabriel, and from the proposing party, Rakonda Koff, it states the exact same thing as if they just typed it up and added a few additional words, but it literally was the same thing. No formal investigation was done. No hard proof was given to me that I acted in misconduct or anything of that nature.
Okay. And so, and I'm just trying to make sure I follow my timeline. So you conducted an appeal.
Mhm.
You don't feel like that appeal had a fair process, but essentially the decision was rendered from the appeal, right? There's not an appeal outstanding at this point, correct?
Well, there are appeals that are outstanding at
Okay.
this point. But what goes back into why I say the appeal process was rigged, might I say, because leading up to the termination, and what I brought here today is this envelope, just as it is. These are complaints and emails that I have emailed Director Gabriel, my management, my supervisor, Rakonda. I have emailed them about my conditions, about what's going on with me to help me get out of this hostile and toxic work environment, in which they have the capability to do. It's 5D DC DMV Service Center. They could have easily rotated me, but instead of exercising that right to do that, they rather keep me in that environment and terminate me, instead of ensuring that I'm working in a safe environment, an environment at which one point I was pregnant and during all of this. Bringing forth my concerns to management, upper management, my union rep, and no good faith was done to take me out of that toxic environment, to do a formal investigation, to get to the root of the problem.
Okay. Got it. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Ms. Deloche,
Yes.
so you currently are at the DMV.
Well, I've been on administrative leave
Okay.
since October the 15th,
Of 2024?
2024.
Okay.
They called me back in the, well, we done a proposal. First of all, let me say, when I went in to get the first proposal, I went in there, they gave me a box. They had my box already packed up. I've been there for 32 years, never had no type of disciplinary action, evaluations, 3 and above, and never had no, so to me, she already was ready, Ms. Cobb, she was ready to terminate me over what had happened. However, we done a proposal, we sent it in.
And sorry, just to clarify, when you say we, is that you and your labor
Union
representation?
rep, yes,
Okay.
Mr. Davis. We sent the proposal in. We found a couple of mistakes that what they was trying to charge me with was in the DPM. So they sent me another letter to my home. First, she sent me an email to my home. Let me back. On December the 5th, when I went there, they had like 8 people that gave statements. They only gave me 2 statements out of the 8 people that wrote statements. So I emailed Joey and I told Joey, hey, they only gave me 2 statements. It was like 8 people that wrote statements. Where are the rest of the statements? I emailed Ms. Carrs and I asked her, is there any way you can send me all the documents that was submitted to you all? Once we submitted everything in, on January the 7th, they came back with a 10-day proposal because they're going to make the corrections. I'm still on administrative leave right now. I'm still on administrative leave with pay, but like Christina said, they already know what they was going to do because, and then they like to embarrass you in front of people. They call me in there 9 a.m. in the morning. She gonna already had my bag packed up, my box packed up and stuff. So they give me a proposal for termination. I've been there 33 years, half of my life. And it's just, I'm not understanding this. I'm really not. Every time you email them to try to get, could you tell me what's going on? They don't want to address anything. And I mean, right now, I'm still waiting on, what am I waiting on, Joey? I'm waiting on them to do my termination letter. I guess they're going to terminate me after 32 years. Never. I have evaluations and everything. Never had no bad evaluations or anything. Then all of them sits up there together, side by side. They have Marquise as I've never been through nothing like this before, excuse me, as the hearing examiner. Normally you have an outside person or somebody at adjudication to do a hearing, but it's Raconda, room, Marquise room, and then Gabriel room. So how am I getting a fair chance on anything? And then by Ms. Carr, she already had me packed up. So you already made your decision about what you was going to do.
Yeah, okay. I want to make sure I turn to Mr. Jameson and ask him a question or two, but I also just want to thank you. I know it is not an easy thing to come down and talk about this and what's happened to you. So I very much appreciate you sharing that. So hang on tight for a second longer though. Mr. Jameson, if you're still with us, although it looks like you might have dropped off. Okay. I think Mr. Jameson dropped off. So Mr. Davis, let me come back to you on this. From your perspective then, oftentimes, I've been doing this a while, so I know that sometimes in hearings, we're going to hear about things that aren't working right. And they can be very directed at certain individuals. And this may not be the best place to single out a specific individual, but and we can follow up after the hearing to hear more about that. This can be a space that will help understand, though, from a systems perspective, what's not working in the way that you think would be a fair, equitable way to, have a type of a review and appeal. So from your perspective and from AFJE, what needs to happen next?
I do agree with what Mr. Loach said. I think that we need impartial individuals from outside agencies to make these determinations. When you're talking about people's life and livelihood, people have families, people have bills to pay. And if an employee has engaged in behavior that violates the DPM or what have you, then that employee should be held accountable. We agree with that. However, the way in which you go about doing that can vary significantly. It seems to me that the agency is uninterested in doing anything other than essentially rubber stamping what management has already issued. I have not had the same experiences at other agencies where we've attempted to negotiate. Maybe a 5-day suspension would turn into a 2-day suspension, et cetera. That's not my experience at DMV. So I think one of the things that we need to do citywide to improve this is to ensure that decision makers come from outside of the agency in which that decision is being made so that they really can impartially review those facts. I think that would go a long way to restoring that balance and also just instilling trust in both employees and the agency as well that the decision is appropriate.
Okay. And how would you envision what you just described coming to fruition and coming to pass?
I think there's a couple options. I think that we have to look at probationary employees separate from employees who have completed their probation. For probationary employees, I think the city should establish an ombudsman position where those individuals can go to that person without fear of retaliation. As it is now, most of our probationary employees, they don't even speak to the union because once they start doing that, they're going to be on the chopping block. So I think a neutral ombudsman position would go far in addressing probationary employee concerns. I think that DCHR can design a mechanism by which adverse actions, corrective actions, and so forth, depending on the level that they rise to, are automatically farmed out to another individual at another agency who has both the position, the background, and the capacity to make an impartial decision on that matter.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Well, I want to thank all of you for your testimony and for bringing this forward. I obviously want to work with our labor leadership and the employees to make sure that you see a space, an agency where you feel valued and respected, where when you put your time in, you've got the protections, and that there's a fairness in how everything gets adjudicated and that you have confidence in that process. I am under no illusion that we're always going to agree on every single issue that's out there under the sun, but when we have confidence in a fairness of a process that everyone can be heard, it generally creates a better process that people feel respected and heard throughout that. So what I'm going to ask, I'll have my team follow up with you after the hearing so that we can make sure we understand the specifics, and there might be some things you couldn't quite share, in this setting that maybe we can make sure we understand a little better. Then Mr. Davis, of course, happy to follow up you and AFGE to understand what you think can change. And then when the director comes up a little bit later, we can ask some questions about this as well as after the hearing, continue to follow up and work with the agency too. So I want to thank you very much for your testimony. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to our witness list, and because I think that some of the themes of the public testimony is going to transition a little bit. Thank you for your flexibility, because I want to make sure we're able to have folks be able to testify here. Next, that means I'm going to bring back up, I believe, Shauna Dillavu, Tyrone Gibson, Jackie Wright, Emmanuel Jackson, Nancy Groth, Vernon McNeil. You can come on up to the table too. And Commissioner Groth, if you want to come on up. And I believe we have Carl Bergman, who's joining us virtually. All right. And are you Tyrone Gibson, sir? Okay. And Mr. Gibson and Ms. Groth, were you testifying together? Okay. All right, then if you'll bring your chair on up. All right, so let me go back to my order then. So I have, is Tyrone Gibson here?
That's me.
Okay, sorry. All right, Mr. Gibson. All right, so I've got you, then Ms. Dillavu. All right, so Mr. Gibson, let's turn to you next. If you'll hit the button so the red light comes on. There you go.
Okay, I've been to the motor vehicle 3 times just to get a change of address ID. I've gotten paperwork from the management of the building. Because the type of work that I do, I'm a traveling caregiver, so I go from city to city, state to state. Right now, I work with Ms. Groff. So I brought all the paperwork that I needed, my ID, the OID, everything that you can imagine. Bills, anything that came to the address. I couldn't get a change of address. I don't understand it. When you walk inside that place, I can understand everything these people say. It's the spirit and the environment in there is toxic. It's terrible. It's like they don't care. They look at, it's like they're lifeless. I can imagine what these people are going through. It's horrible. So I don't have to say anything. The DMV is screwed up. I mean, you can't even change the address with a letter from the management, the company, the corporation saying that I live there and I can't get a change of address. Imagine people that were in a fire or something, lost all their identification. Imagine people that are homeless in the street who are trying to get their lives together. What chance can they get? If you don't have no ID, what kind of chance do you have? This is really messed up. You know, technology is wonderful and everything, but I think you guys need to get out in the streets, literally get out in the streets, go into these offices and literally do some hands-on work. Because this emailing and texting and whatever you guys are doing, it ain't doing nothing. And it's not gonna get any better. Just like the lady said, one day somebody's gonna get really frustrated. Sad to say, seriously, and it's happened many a times, just like the school shooting. Somebody's gonna come in there and a bunch of people are gonna get hurt. That's all I gotta say, that's it.
All right. I appreciate Mr. Gibson. Stay there, please. I'm going to ask some more questions about it. And obviously, we do not want at all for any of our employees and staff what you just described to happen there. And we also want people who are coming in for services to get what they're looking for. Stillavu, let me turn to you.
Also, you do great on that name. A lot of people get real tripped up on Delivu and you said it right
I have
every
messed up a
time.
lot of names in my time here, so thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. Good morning. I'm Shauna Delivu. I'm the founder and CEO of Brightlines. We're a doxing prevention company. So that means we find our clients risky data, their personal data online, and where we can, we remove it. We're a DC headquartered company. Many of our staff and our clients call DC home, including myself. And when I started this company in 2021, my hope was to support our democracy. We aimed specifically at protecting folks running for office, as well as folks working to keep elections free and fair. And I never thought we'd be as in demand across as many groups of regular folks as we are today. In the case that my written testimony didn't make the problem of doxing to this city's residents particularly clear, let me double down. The members of this committee, yourself, council member, you don't need me to tell you what it's like to be a public figure, to understand and take on the risks that you and your family does for your selfless service and for your leadership. However, for us, it's the folks who get targeted for just being a civil servant, a victim advocate, a medical professional. These are average people who never suspected that their work would land them in the hot seat or would threaten their families. In the past few weeks have made it incredibly clear that we are not safe in DC. I refer to the mostly Black healthcare workers profiled in the DEI watch list website, which is reminiscent of the DHS watch list website before that and the Department of Education before that. There will be more of these sites. To the scores of folks at the DOJ who are being targeted because of their involvement, because they were doing their job investigating January 6th cases. So these folks didn't opt into a life of scrutiny. As a former Fed myself, like we never would have assumed someone would know our name. We didn't opt into that. We didn't make that choice. And the difference between some of our clients who are federal judges or who are elected is that they have the US Marshal Service. Yourselves, more than likely, you can call the police safely and they will believe you and they will help you. But what about the rest of us? We don't have those protections. So I'm here about the DMV because what's unconscionable, we don't get a choice about having a driver's license if we can get one. If we want to drive, if we want to apply for a job, if we want to get on an airplane, if we want to do anything in the city, you need to have an ID. And we also didn't get a choice about whether that data was sold. And it has been sold. It's been sold to data brokers, that's clear. I presented you with an addendum to a contract that the previous director had made with LexisNexis. I'm not so worried about what happened in the past. What I want our assurance is that it's going to stop. Our faces are used to train FBI facial recognition databases. I'm not a civil libertarian. I'm not the kind of like privacy person that's like, man, you shouldn't have any of my data. I mean, yes, of course, like I need to opt in. But what I don't believe that's an institution that I can trust any longer. And I come from intelligence. I come from the federal government. So what I want to understand is where from here we're going, especially now that the CFPB has been shuttered, essentially by Elon Musk, that there will be no more protection, there's no more oversight around data brokers. What are we doing to ensure that the DMV is not selling our data to LexisNexis or to others? That when they have sold it in the past, it's not gotten resold according to the DPPA, the federal legislation. And that we're aware that we can remove our information, that that there's some remediation. These are my questions for the DMV and for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next, let me turn to Jackie Wright, who we have online virtually. Jackie Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. We'll turn to you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Allen. Well, as you probably know, I'm here to represent Foundries ID Ministry, the unhoused and housing insecure folks that we see every week. We, I know I said this last time, but just to remind everybody in the room, we open up on our website every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. We open up anywhere between 30 and 60 appointments, and those appointments are taken within 2 hours, completely gone. And what we do is we help people who are in a vulnerable situation get their documents ready to come to the DMV to hopefully get a non-driver's ID. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Walker said, like the system is not set up for really anybody but a very average or even privileged user. You know, it's set up for people who have a mortgage, who have a lease, who have utility bills, etc. And it really leaves at least, it's, you know, Foundry sees 2,000 people a year at least. So it leaves at least that many people out. And often these people are just trying to improve their lives. They're trying to get education. They're trying to get housing. They're trying to get health care, trying to enroll their kids in school. So we are asking if the DMV would consider please expanding the list of secondary documents that are acceptable for proof of residency to re-include bank statements and phone bills, and to also make the certification process for proof of residency easier, which is, all of these things have gotten harder within the last couple of years. I understand the concerns there, but again, the majority of folks that we see, they're really just trying anything they can do to improve their lives. So I'm just here on behalf of those folks and asking that you would all keep in mind that the system is set up for people who look like me, not the people who wait outside our door in the freezing cold for, you know, an hour to get in to hopefully be seen by one of our volunteers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wright. Let's see. We had Emmanuel Jackson on our witness, but I don't believe that Mr. Jackson is here. Ms. Groth, did you want to testify, or did you feel like Mr. Jameson hit everything you wanted to hit?
I'm a follow-up to Mr. Gibson, but if.
Sorry, Mr. Gibson, I apologize. Yep, I'm just kind of working my way through the list. So I just had you on the list. I'm just kind of going chronologically. So would you like to testify, Ms. Groth? Okay.
Thank you, council member. I'm here as the other half of Mr. Gibson's testimony because I'm Mr. Gibson's employer, his landlady, and his roommate. I've employed Mr. Gibson for over 5 years. He's lived with me as my personal care aide. His housing and utilities are additional to his salary as part of his compensation. So he doesn't have a lease or a utility bill to present. Even though that barter arrangement's not documented on tax returns or anywhere else we can present, is paid. I do use a payroll service. I pay all payroll taxes, DC unemployment, paid medical family leave, FUTA, workers' comp insurance, and employer general liability insurance. I am the grid here. I should be able, as the housing provider, to certify his residency at our shared address using the DC proof of residency certification form. On January 30th was his last go round at this. On his third visit to the DMV, Mr. Gibson was again denied the change of address to our address on his existing non-expired real ID, non-driver ID. Despite presenting a letter from our building, a copy of the form, when I registered him as an aide in our building, his most recent pay stub for me using a national payroll service, which shows both of us at the same address, the form that I signed, a scanned copy of both my own non-driver ID, and I threw in my A and C ID just for grins, and various pieces of my own proofs of residency in DC. This is unacceptable. The Department of Motor Vehicles should institute the following 2 reforms. Number 1, create a category on that certification form for employment-based residency, where the documentation would be appropriate to employer relationships. For example, the most recent employer's quarterly contribution and wage report that we all file for DC unemployment has the name of both the employer and the employee on it. It doesn't get any more on the grid than that. Examples of employment-based residency would include on-site building superintendents and custodians, groundskeepers, personal administrators, nannies, and personal care aides or healthcare aides to seniors and disabled persons. Number 2, create a get out of purgatory protocol for anyone's 3rd or 4th visit to the DMV, where someone other than whoever you happen to get by the luck of the draw at the desk would review the documents that someone is presenting. If there's a common sense answer, somebody should be able to resolve that and issue the ID. If there isn't, they should determine what can be done for someone to either successfully establish and prove either identity or residency, and be given a clear written answer for the denial reasons and information of options for appeal, legal aid resources, groups like Foundry's ID Ministry, someone else to provide assistance to people from the public who are frustrated on multiple trips to the DMV. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to be contacted about the implementation of these reforms.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Commissioner Groth. And Mr. Gibson, if you're able, would you mind coming back up to the table? Because I'm going to ask a couple of questions here. I think if you just come on the end, you don't have to go anywhere, Commissioner Groth. I think if Mr. Gibson just comes on the edge there, perfect. Thank you very much. We have a couple more folks, and I'm going to turn to some questions. So Mr. McNeil, let me turn to you now. If you'll push the button so the red light comes on.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll go ahead and begin now.
Yep.
My
when
name is
you're ready.
Vernon McNeil. I'm employed by Metro Transit Authority. In February.
Mr. McNeil, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but could you pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you? I want to make sure that, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Vernon McNeil. I'm employed by Metro Transit Authority. I've been there for over 30 years. Around February 2020, the DMV mailed me notification that it was time for me to renew my driver's license. I gathered all the proper paperwork. I took it down to them. The young lady mismanaged and jumbled my paperwork and then fell on the floor. So she kept asking, where was my birth certificate? This was the birth certificate that I gave her, okay? A supervisor came up who never said who he was. He ordered me off the property and told me that I have to go get him a physical eye report and a physical report saying I was able to drive a car. Okay, I complied. I went to my doctor, and my doctor was in Kaiser Permanente. He filled out this paperwork here. Okay, I went back down. I gave it to them. A supervisor who was not the same supervisor that I talked to came up to me and said, sorry, you never gave us the paperwork in time. So I complied and went and got another paperwork, okay? I originally found the original document. They got this document within 60 days, okay? Because it says you must comply and return all medical records within 60 days, okay? They've gotten over close to 7 reports, and they highlight the report of information they want. They continuously lied and said I never gave them any medical records, and they were given medical records. Okay, then COVID kicked in, and they still never responded back. They still never helped me, still never gave me back my driver's license. After the DMV finally opened up again, I went back down there with the same paperwork. They refused to look at it. They refused to review it. The only thing they told me was I have to start everything all over again. I said, no, that was not the issue. The issue was whether I could drive a car. I gave y'all the paperwork. You denied it. You rejected it. That's where they were wrong. Okay, there needs to be an oversight committee. That DMV management team needs to be investigated thoroughly. Okay, so they told me I had to take the written test, the eye test and everything over again. I passed the eye test. Okay, I thought they were going to then give me my driver's license. They said, oh, no. You have to go get a manual. So I said, what do you mean manual? They told me I had to literally go to the library. It would take 2 weeks to do all this now and print out a 120-page booklet. Okay, the last time I remembered, the federal government gives Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Virginia money to pay out, to print these pamphlets. Okay, no citizen, no taxpayer of the District of Columbia should have to go to a library and print out a manual when they are paid to do that themselves. Okay, they also, I took my car through inspection. They fined me $20. They placed my name on a donor's orchestration list and then charged me $6. Okay, I said, I did not give you any paperwork saying I was donating my organs to anybody. So I said, take my name off, give me back my $6. They gave me a bogus phone number. It just was a rotisserie number. No one responded. Okay, I was told, and I called the mayor and I called the city council and I talked to my council person and I explained to them. They told me to then go to M Street. I went to M Street Northwest. I was highly disrespected. Okay, the security guard disrespected me. She would not call Mr. Robinson. She said, he's not coming down here to talk to you. The same supervisor that ordered me off the property that day was at the building. He did not remember me, but I remembered him. Okay, I asked him, would he look at my paperwork? He said he wasn't looking at anything. He told me, you're going to get your driver's license, but it won't be the day. And he never gave me a time, a date, or any indication when he would give me my driver's license back. Okay, they laughed at me after I left the building. And I have not heard from anybody.
Got it. All right, Mr.
and
McNeil,
one other thing.
I apologize, we're about 2 minutes over already. So if you could wrap up, and then I'm going to
Okay.
ask some questions just a little
They
bit.
then asked that I also submit it and give them another doctor's report stating I can physically drive a car. I did that. I want my driver's license back. I didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And our last witness on this panel, then we're going to turn to some questions, is Carl Bergman. And he is joining us virtually. So Carl Bergman, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Good morning, when you're ready.
Yes, Chairman Allen, as I'm sure you and the members of your committee know, all DC driver's licenses are renewed for 8-year terms. I would like the committee to review the renewal period for driver's licenses for people over 70. When my license expired on my 69th birthday, I was renewed until my 77th birthday. On that, which was in 2021, on that day, I submitted my required medical exam and was renewed for 8 more years until hopefully I turn 83 in 2028. I think it's 2025, actually. As we age, our reflexes slow, our vision may change, and we may take medications that have the same effect. 8 years is too long to wait for an eye exam, at least for those over 70. I recognize that there's no accepted standard for examining people over 70, and state laws vary considerably about this. And if it still exists, has a very nice summary of each state's requirements on its website. I ask that the committee review those standards and hold hearings on the subject. For example, DC is the only jurisdiction requiring both a physician's exam and an eye exam. The district's method for submitting those exams also needs review. To submit the form, you must download it, scan it, print it, and take it to the exams to the physicians. Once you have the signatures, you must scan them in, upload the form to a complicated and redundant DMV site, and I've put that in a screenshot of that in my testimony. The process itself qualifies as an agility test. Please look into the standards. Also, I want to thank the committee staff for their sensitivity to my PII. I uploaded my testimony a picture of my driver's license with some information redacted, and they asked me if I wanted to have more of that. They also were very considerate of me adding me at the last moment to the witness list.
Got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Bergman. Appreciate that. And I just made sure that my staff heard your thanks about making sure we protect that information. So thank you very much. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for your testimony. I do have a couple of questions I want to work through. So Mr. Gibson, let me start with you. And Commissioner Groth, if y'all are okay, just kind of sharing the microphone if you need to move the mic around a little bit. So you have attempted multiple times going to the DMV. If you could turn the button so the red light comes on, so that way we can hear you. Okay, so you've attempted multiple times to go there. To your knowledge, you feel like you've brought every document that is required by the DMV to be able to get your ID?
Yes.
Okay. And they have said they have declined your ID based on they don't believe you have sufficient documentation of some type?
Exactly.
Okay. We've had previous conversations with the department around trying to figure out, because I think I heard one of our witnesses talk about the secondary list of documents of how do we help make sure we have the right type of documentation. Because on one hand, I am sympathetic to the agency of wanting to make sure that they've got confidence in the documents they have in front of them because they're issuing a government ID that will be used for any number of purposes. So we want them to have confidence in that documentation, of course. On the other hand, we do want to work with residents to make sure that it's flexible enough to meet those different needs. And it certainly sounds like, Commissioner Groth, you talked about some of the documentation you've had, and we've had this conversation with the agency again. I know we'll continue to have it. I guess, Ms. Groth, you singled out one document that I think was interesting. So you talked about kind of the employer-employee documentation.
Yes.
That is required and shows an address. All right. So if, Commissioner Groth, and I know you wouldn't do this, but if you lied about the address, if you lied about the address for Mr. Gibson on your employment tax documentation, wouldn't that be considered illegal? And
Yes.
wouldn't you be considered committing criminal fraud with criminal and financial consequences by the district government? Can you move the microphone so, Mr. Gibson, so that gets picked up?
Yes, his W-2 would be fraudulent. My pay stub that shows my address and his address, which are the same, would be fraudulent. Yes, I would be committing any number of payroll tax fraud.
And I think that's
criminal acts.
we had this conversation with the department a couple of months ago, and I know we'll continue to have this conversation with them. And I want to try to find some common ground with the department on this, because if I have documentation that is accepted and trusted by other parts of district government,
yes,
with
and federal
federal government with clear criminal and financial consequences,
Yes.
if you were to be
Yes,
committing
Councilmember.
fraud, I struggle to understand why that documentation isn't one of the other pieces that can be accepted, right?
Yes.
And that to me, I share the same cognitive dissonance that you have of like, why is it that like you clearly be committing a lot of fraud if you were lying about it there? Why can't that document also count as a secondary document that would be accepted?
Absolutely.
So I just want you to know, we've we've had that conversation with the department. I know it's going to probably take a couple more conversations to keep working together to try to find a way and find some common ground there. And again,
There must be other people with employment-based
Yes.
residency.
I think so. And I
who will
think it's
never have a
reasonable.
lease who will never have a lease or a utility
Mm-hmm.
bill or any of the middle-class normative
Right.
ways of showing that you're attached to a physical address.
Right. And there might be also some unique arrangements that we need to figure out how do our rules work so that in the event of it is someone who is a live-in aide, we find a way that we're able to, that's not going to necessarily be what everybody out there experiences, but that is a legitimate experience and relationship.
And we're not even in a private home doing
Right.
this. We're in a seniors and disabled facility that is also licensed by the District of Columbia.
Yeah.
Department of Aging, we have a gabillion licenses, and the building also provided us a letter certifying that both of us physically live in that apartment.
Right. Okay. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here, both of you. Please know this is on our radar. We've had some conversations with the department already. We will continue. But I think you kind of really highlight why it's
And my request number 2, which is to create some kind of a get out of purgatory
Mhm.
bucket for people to appeal
Yep.
or get extra resources or get to some common sense.
Yeah.
Whether it meets the exact list of secondary documents or not. Clearly, it's flying like a duck, it's swimming like a duck, it's walking like a duck.
I hear you. I will also ask our partners at the DMV, since we have a lot of the leadership here and you're here in person as well, perhaps we could have members of the DMV connect here so we can, thank you very much. So I see a lot of heads nodding. I got a business card in the air. So,
I believe Mr. Gibson brought all his documents just in
okay.
case.
Hey, if we can knock this out this afternoon, that'd be great. So thank you. Appreciate the DMV. We'll make
But
sure
you
that
should
happens
not
here.
have to have a commissioner for an
Agreed.
employer.
I don't want to have to handle each one of these in a
Lady
hearing
roommate.
either. So it's the
Yes.
systems, but let me also try to take advantage of the opportunity. If I have DMV leadership here and I have you here, let's see if we can solve this one. But to your bigger picture on the systems, we're going to keep working on that.
Yeah, as a commissioner, I'm interested in the systems.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you very much. Ms. Dilleville, I wanted to thank you for your testimony. At the council, I've done a number of things around trying to find address confidentiality.
Oh, yeah.
I helped create the district's first address confidentiality when it comes to survivors of domestic violence, other ways
Thank
to
you for that.
prevent that type of doxing, right?
Right.
That can take place that really threatens people. So I am sympathetic to certainly what you're
But it was
describing.
that ACP program that found our clients' data on LexisNexis because the DMV sold it to them.
So that's what I was going to ask you a little bit, if you could help educate us a little bit here.
Yeah.
What would be, first set of questions is why would data be sold to LexisNexis?
LexisNexis is a data broker. Kroger's is a data broker.
Mhm.
Equifax, the credit bureaus, they're data brokers. Anyone who's collecting data is a data broker. They call themselves what they'd like, but there's no legislation around it, and there won't be federal legislation because too many of them fund Congress. So
No, I understand what they are. What I'm asking is why? In other words,
Why?
why would it be in the interest of an agency, be it
Oh.
the DMV or anybody else, who sell data?
because
to-
it's money. It's millions of dollars. California sold its DMV database after CCPA was in force for 30 million, which frankly, I think is a paltry sum for the millions of people who live in that state. I would be angry on that point before I was angry that they sold my data. The value is money. I don't know if it's not enough, the taxes that we pay as residents, as companies, but if that's the case, I'd gladly pay more so that very sensitive data isn't sold. Y'all, when I started this company, we worked with election officials. Like I said, with a background in intelligence, they were giving us stories about people waiting for them outside of their precincts to follow them home. And I was like, okay, I got this. You just need to do evasive maneuvers. Here's how you get rid of them on the way home. And they said, respectfully, ma'am, that's so sweet. All they need to do is take a photo of my license plate. Go to one of these Spokio, White Pages, whatever, and they can, for $25, find my home address. There's no evading that. We worry because part of this too is that courts will sell data. So you combine those two, what happens? You get a parking ticket, you get a speeding ticket, and there's a summons. That's a court record that when it's sold to a data broker has your name, your home address, your date of birth, the VIN number of your car, the license plate number, potentially your license number. Why is that a problem? If you're, say, an abortion provider in a southern state, I mean, in any state at this stage, what we've had for clients who are providers is drones following their cars, following them. Because they have their address, they wait outside, or they have their VIN number, they follow the car. If the license plate reader data gets sold, then it becomes very easy to connect how to find someone. And not just, I don't think any longer that our threat assessment is just situations of intimate partner violence. There are whole networks of people who seem to believe that this shadow state exists and that we're the seed of it. And so if they can find individual names to pick out, they will go after them in their homes. I don't think I answered your question, but I hopefully gave you a lot of information.
You answered that and the next question.
Okay,
So
great.
thank you. So what I was trying to get first was what's the value? And if the value is money, like and we'll have this conversation with the department when they come up a little bit, because I want to make sure I understand, is there something that we're getting back in return from
No.
LexisNexis that somehow
No, I
outside
can't
money?
we can't remove our client data from LexisNexis. They will not allow it. They say we can publicly suppress it and we'll adjudicate whether to do that based on your request and who you are. And the timeline is open whenever we get to it. And we've had clients, folks on some of these watch lists who've made this attempt and have been turned down. Have just been turned down. There's no appeal process. They're a private company.
Okay.
And so there's no removal, right? There's zero removal, but even just getting it suppressed so that someone can't find you.
Got it. All right. So you're happy to follow up after the hearing as well. Your recommendation is we need to think about legislation that helps block the sale of that data. And I'm going to wager you're going to tell me not just DMV, but other agencies.
And
too.
legislation would be awesome citywide. This is second to 5 panels I'm going to testify at. Like, this is a problem all over the city. I think more importantly, we already have data classifications. This data set itself is classified as confidential. There's no reason for it to be sold. So I would love to see an investigation into just how many data brokers have our data and where they are, and then to think about legislation to take steps to claw that back.
Got it. Okay, I appreciate it. We'll follow up too on that. To Ms. Wright, I appreciated your testimony. And similar to my conversation with Mr. Gibson, I think it is a ongoing conversation. I know you and I have chatted before a couple of months ago. The issues around what is the secondary list of documents. We talked about that during our hearing. I think it was in December, November. And it's one that I think the conversation is going to continue with the department. I think today we heard about a real life example where there are challenges around how we're doing our documentation, and you gave us a list of others as well. So I don't have any other questions really, because I think we're on the same page here that we need to be taking a look at that, and I will continue to work with the department. And again, to my partners in the department, I understand there are serious challenges they've got to think through around what documentations allow them to issue a government ID. So I'm not ignoring that, but I also want to make sure we're speaking up for the folks that are going to have a harder time being able to hit those secondary documents. And so it's a line we got to walk, but we got to figure out how to take those steps. So I appreciate it. Mr. McNeil, I appreciate your testimony today as well. Again, I know we've got some of our leadership from DMV in the room, so I'd ask if they can make sure not just to Mr. Gibson, but to Mr. McNeil, let's exchange some information here and see what conversations we have while we're all here to see if we can address some of that. I don't pretend to know all the details. You helped share a lot of it, so thank you. But it sounds like we need to have a little bit more of a kind of a case manager almost to kind of work through and understand what the challenges are. And Mr. Bergman, I appreciate your testimony. I will tell you, I remember a couple of years ago, I think I had recommended that after age 70, drivers would even have to come in and do the test every 5 or 10 years. And I got some strong pushback from some of my older neighbors that they didn't want to come back and do a driving test. But I think it was for the same reasons
No state requires another driving test at that age. The states that do have some test, some requirement, generally make it an eye test. Um, uh, there's a paucity of really decent research on this point. People over 70 tend to self-limit themselves in their driving, is one of the things I can gather from looking at the research
Yep.
for this.
Well, I went even further. At one point, I had recommended that actually, why don't, last time I took a driving test, I was 15 years old. And so,
So was I.
and, you know, and the rules that I learned were not in the District of Columbia. It was in a different state, which has
Mhm.
different rules than here. And so I don't think it's unreasonable that for a lot of folks who also might have mobility and have moved from different states, that there would be an appropriate time to make sure that we're re-upping. And also, our laws change frequently enough too. So the rules that someone born and raised in DC and took their license test, those things might have changed as well. So I might be in a minority on this one, that it's a good idea to kind of come back every decade or two and check in on this. But I take your point, and we'll certainly work with the department on where we can identify how frequent that should be in terms of both the medical and the eye
And
examination.
the process
there's
they have is just absurd.
I'm sorry?
The process for putting those things in, getting the signatures and having to scan everything in and then upload it itself, which has redundant information requests in there. All of those things need to be examined. It's a quite a lucrative area for the committee's work.
Got it. All right. Well, we will certainly
May
look
I
at that.
inject one other thought
Yes, sir.
briefly about establishing whether or not someone lives at a particular place? Notary public's function predates by a considerable amount the common law, and is one of the continuing things in Western civilization, the use of notary publics. And I think that should be an alternative for people as well, that they can go and say, I live at such and such an address, and whether or not they satisfy the notary should be acceptable. Or rather, if they do satisfy the notary, that should be acceptable as an alternative.
Got it. Okay. We'll take a note of that recommendation as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, again, I want to thank all of our witnesses on this panel. Again, I'm looking to DMV partners to follow up with a couple of our folks that are here as well directly. And thank you all very much, and look forward to the work that's ahead. Thank you. With that, we are going to switch over now to our government witnesses. So let me just give a moment here while we have Gabriel Robinson, who's the director of the DMV, come on up in just a moment here. And as always, Director Robinson, if there's anybody I know you have several members of your leadership team that's here. If you want anybody else to come to the table, please let me know. And as always, we swear in our government witnesses, and then what I'll do is turn it over to you for your testimony and any statements you'd like to make, and then we'll jump right into questions. So if you are ready, sir, if you raise your right hand. Do you please raise your hand? Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury the testimony about to give to the Committee on Transportation and the Environment is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. So good morning to you. And if you can hit the button so the light comes on, and then I will turn it over to you for your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Allen, members of the committee, council members, and staff of the committee. I am Gabriel Robinson, Director of the District of Columbia Department of Motor Vehicles, and I'm pleased to testify before you today. On behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser, I would like to thank our customers, Chairman Allen, this committee, and the rest of council for your support of DCDMV. The feedback you provide this agency is valued and critically important in guiding our decision-making processes for service improvements. I would like to also extend a special thank you to all my colleagues at DCDMV for their hard work, dedication, and commitment to serving our customers. I'm proud to share the major accomplishments for the DMV in fiscal year 2024 and year-to-date fiscal year 2025. The mission of DC DMV is to promote the safe operation of motor vehicles and public safety while providing outstanding customer service. As I frequently tell my team, our agency is truly saving lives every single day. The agency has 3 operational divisions: Adjudication Services, Vehicle Services, Driver Services. Adjudication Services team provide ticket processing, ticket noticing, hearings, and hearing support to residents and non-residents in order to render legally sound decisions on parking, photo enforcement, and minor movement violations. The adjudication team also ensures proper processing of violations and penalty payments for these infractions. Additionally, driver's license revocation and reinstatement hearings are provided by Adjudication Services. Vehicle Services provides titling, registration, and inspection services to residents, business, and government entities so that they may legally drive, park, and sell their vehicles in the District of Columbia. The Driver Services Division provides driver certification and identification services to residents, ensuring they have the proper credentials to reflect identity and residence and driving qualifications so that they may legally and safely operate their vehicles. Annually, DMV serves over 650,000 licensed drivers and identification card holders in the district and over 310,000 registered vehicle owners. We consistently interact with district residents and non-residents with an average of 3,200 daily customer contact, more than almost any other district government agency. And any other agency. We've also collected and are taking payment for more than 4 million tickets. In fiscal year 2024, we met the needs of over 296,000 customers across our 4 service center locations. And this fiscal year, we've already provided services to over 75,000 district residents. Additionally, we have provided adjudication services, including conducting over 310,000 in-person and mail hearings and over 17,000 virtual hearings. In fiscal year 2024, we inspected more than 150,000 vehicles, including more than 13,000 inspections conducted at our self-service OBD emissions kiosk at Tacoma and Fort Stanton recreation centers. The agency issued more than 55,000 vehicle titles and registration and issued more than 77,000 identity credentials, including driver's license and non-driver IDs. Our support service and processing center teams also process and mail products generated from more than 392,000 online transactions. In fiscal year 2024, DMV launched several innovative products and initiatives to better serve our customers, promote safe operation of motor vehicles and public safety, and streamline our internal processes. Notably, DC DMV joined 41 other U.S. jurisdictions in the state-to-state verification program. In compliance with the Federal Real ID Act, state-to-state was implemented in 2015 by the American Association of Motor Vehicles Administrators as an electronic tool to allow states to share information electronically to other states about an applicant's driver record. The state-to-state verification program allows other motor vehicle entities to electronically check with other participating states to confirm if an individual holds a driver's license or identification card in their state. State-to-state also enables states to request another state to surrender or invalidate a credential. By participating in state-to-state program, DC DMV now has access to nationwide driver history record functionality, which supports the concept of one driver, one credential, and one driver history in one state. The implementation of state-to-state has already led to increased efficiencies when processing credentials, and DMV is seeing increased driver history accuracy and completeness. This ultimately supports our mission to promote the safe operation of motor vehicles and public safety in the District of Columbia. In March of 2024, DC DMV opened its second self-service onboard diagnostic emissions test kiosk in Ward 8's Fort Stanton neighborhood at the Fort Stanton Recreation Center at 1812 Erie Street Southeast. The new kiosk allows district residents to perform their own vehicle emissions test 24 hours, 7 days a week. The ATM-style kiosk boasts touchscreen technology, an integrated vehicle identification number barcode scanner, step-by-step audio support, and other user-friendly features. The district's first self-service kiosk, launched by Mayor Bowser in 2019, remains available to residents and is located at Tacoma Rec Center. Both kiosks are available to inspect private vehicles with model years 2005 and newer that were previously inspected by DC DMV at the inspection station on Half Street Southwest. In 2024, the Fort Stanton kiosk performed more than 600 successful emission tests, and the Tacoma Park location completed more than 13,000 emissions tests. In FY 2025, DMV is already seeing increased usage of the Fort Stanton site and expect residents to increasingly use this location as well as the Tacoma location. In August of 2024, DMV released a newly designed temporary tag to mitigate vehicle registration fraud and replace the existing pre-printed card tag stock. DMV upgraded its temporary tag offering to a modern paper tag with laser printed alphanumeric digits generated randomly by our system. The enhanced DMV temporary tag feature features weather-resistant, fade-proof, and tear-proof paper. The new tag is now available at all DMV service centers. DC DMV launched the Knowledge Test education outreach program for teenagers and young adults ages 16 to 21, with the first boot camp cohort meeting during the summer of 2024. This free summer program provided young people with the opportunity to participate in DC DMV's Permit Prep Boot Camp with the goal of preparing attendees to take and pass the knowledge test to obtain a learner's permit. The classes ran 6 3-day sessions each week from July 9th to August 15th and met at the DC DMV's Southwest Service Center. All 56 participants who participated in the first cohort left the fast-paced 3-day boot camp with the confidence, knowledge, resources, and materials necessary to take the DMV knowledge test. 88% of the students in the first cohort who took the knowledge test during the summer passed the test on their first try. The DMV Permit Prep Bootcamp students, as well as others studying the knowledge test in 2024, enjoyed a redesigned and improved DC DMV driver manual with an easier to navigate digital reading experience and more user-friendly features. The new manual is available to the public for download via the DC DMV's website with translations in Spanish, French, Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, and Amharic. DMV is the leader in innovation and leveraging technology. To that end, we continue to make improvements and additions to the agency's mobile app. We're seeing increased usage of the app with over 184,000 individual downloads and over 3,500 average monthly users in FY 2024. Customers completed over 43,000 transactions from their smart devices in fiscal year 2024. DMV added several more transactions to the mobile app, including address change requests, Vision Zero educational videos, and the DC DMV driver manual, among other helpful products and features. We continue to encourage the public to use DC DMV's mobile app through our Skip the Trip program. The mobile app is free and can be downloaded from Apple's App Store and the Google Play Store by searching DC DMV. In addition to interacting with district residents through the app, DMV has been proactive in announcing operational updates through multiple communication channels, including press releases, social media, the DMV website, and through direct channels such as mail, email, and electronic newsletters, which is distributed to nearly 500,000 subscribers. The DMV social media channels, including YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X, have collectively grown by 20% over the past fiscal year, leading to a combined audience of over 23,000 unique followers. DMV has also elevated our public outreach and education efforts with robust marketing and public communication campaigns for key DMV initiatives such as the Ignition Interlock Device IID program. The IID program campaign is part of the DC government's coordinated approach to traffic safety and education and emphasizes how DC DMV is committed to preventing impaired driving incidents in the district. Throughout FY 2024 and continuing in FY 2025, DMV is deploying key messaging that emphasizes the costs and consequences of having one more drink, including enrollment in the IID program, vendor installation and monthly maintenance costs of the IID device, high-risk insurance requirements, and daily breathalyzer tests. The agency's communication team, in partnership with the IID program team, launched the "It Could Cost You More Than You Think" campaign, utilizing a robust communications plan. We deployed radio public service announcements for public media partners like iHeartRadio, Audacity, and WAMU Radio. We also created visual ads for WMATA Metro buses and rail cars, and released an engaging animated video on our YouTube page and social media that explains the IID program consequences and ultimately the cost of impaired driving. I am proud to say our campaign, launched, has produced over 4.9 million impressions and amassed over 431,000 engagements across social media. In FY25, DMV will continue to produce marketing campaign to support IID program outreach efforts, which will align with and communicate overall traffic safety and Vision Zero goals. DC DMV is proud to support this Vision Zero principle and foster safer streets for all roadway users. We remain committed to enhancing public awareness and enforcing compliance with DC code regulations through continued collaboration with our DC government agency partners and external media partners. In FY 2024, DC DMV participated in 3 of Mayor Bowser's hiring fairs, making 37 offers on the spot and hiring 30 new employees. We've also hosted 2 job prep workshops for district residents on Thursday, September 19th and Saturday, September 20th at DMV Southwest Service Center. The mini clinics led by DMV's human resources and training teams focused on key interview skills, including how to answer interview questions, common interviews do's and don'ts, and resume preparation tips and best practices. DMV also partnered with the DC Highway Safety Office, DC Department of Transportation, the Metropolitan Police Department, and external partners like State Farm, Safe Kids Worldwide, the Children's National Hospital, to host a free car seat safety check event on September 16th at the DC DMV's inspection station. We hosted a fun and free day for district residents to visit DMV and obtain resources for parents, families, and caregivers on car seat safety with guided instructions on how to correctly install and use car seats from DC DMV's certified technicians. Residents are able to visit the inspection station anytime during normal operating hours and request a car seat safety check or obtain a new car seat, both free of charge. DC DMV was also proud to support several of Mayor Bowser's citywide events in FY24, including participating in the Department of Parks and Recreation Annual Senior Fest celebration on May 29th, a fun-filled event dedicated to district residents over the age 55. The DMV team was on the yard
at the University of the District of Columbia to answer questions, connect, and share resources with festival attendees. Our team look forward to engaging with district resident seniors each year, honoring our commitment to serve the city's most vulnerable residents and ensuring that seniors are able to access DMV resources that they need. The DMV team also participated in the Mayor's Senior Symposium on June 25th, hosted by the DC Department of Park and Recreation and DC Department of Aging and Community Living at Blue Senior High School in Ward 8. Over 2,600 active seniors were in attendance. DC DMV was on hand to answer questions and assist with information on agency services. DMV kicked off the 2024 holiday season at the 26th Annual Senior Holiday Celebration hosted by Mayor Bowser and the DC Department of Aging and Community Living. DMV correspondence and communications team were on hand to answer questions from over 3,500 senior citizens and assist with information on agency services. Looking ahead to the rest of fiscal year 2025, we're excited about the opportunity to further DMV's mission and vision. Our focus will largely be on traffic and roadway safety and reaching district residents with vital information using enhanced technology and communication. In an effort to increase roadway safety, by September 25th, 2025, DMV will implement the Intelligent Speed Assist program for all DC registered vehicles of drivers who are required to enroll in the program. We will also partner with sister agencies such as MPD, DPW, and DDOT to establish a process to prevent the issuance and therefore consequences related to traffic violations accumulated after a vehicle has been reported as stolen. Our team will also continue devising outreach strategies aimed at increasing awareness and enrollment of the DMV's ticket alert system by 10% by May of 2025. Also, in an effort to increase the ignition interlock device program compliance rate, we will continue targeted outreach aimed at increasing the enrollment of the IID program participants, including coordinating with the Office of the Attorney General, DC Superior Court to raise awareness about the requirement to enroll in IID. DMV will also continue to focus on the modernization of our IT capabilities and systems through enhancements to our website experience and mobile devices. We will add the ticket alert system to our mobile app and upgrade the DMV customer experience with the personalized My DMV interface and user experience. We will also roll out a new DMV website. The DMV will expand the knowledge test available languages to include 10 new options, including American Sign Language. The agency will expand the knowledge test bootcamp initiative to select partner high schools in the district to enhance the knowledge of potential drivers preparing for the learner's permit. Finally, DMV is working with MPD to automate the Form 3340, the official notice of proposed revocation, using grant funding from the DC Highway Safety Office. We remain committed to serving the public at a high level. We've been busy in FY24 and 25 to date and will always remain responsive to our residents. We are focused on continuing to operate our facilities in a manner that keeps everyone safe, including customers and our employees. I want to thank Team DC DMV for the dedication to exceptional customer service and public safety. Our commitment to these values will remain at the forefront of our work in fiscal year 2025. My team and I continue to look forward to improving our operational processes to make it easier for DC DMV customers to utilize our services. Again, we appreciate the support we've received from Council and look forward to continuing our efforts to improve the quality of service to residents of the District of Columbia. In closing, I would like to thank Mayor Bowser for her continued leadership and commitment to good governance and accountability. With that, I would take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Director Robinson. Appreciate that. And I'm going to acknowledge a lot of your leadership team is here as well. So thank you all for being here. what I might do, I have several questions based on the responses. Just given the fact that we had two panels of public witnesses, I might jump in with some follow-ups from what we heard from our public witnesses. Then I'll get into the questions we had started preparing. One of the themes from panel number one that we heard was around concern around workplace, concern around the rights of workers to be able to go through an appeals process, a lack of feeling of fairness in that process. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the statement that management isn't engaging. How often does DMV management leadership, so you and your team, sit down and meet with our labor leadership? Is there a regularly set ongoing meeting?
So I have offered with the union leader, particularly Mr. Davis. He was previously the vice president of our agency, and now he's the president over all of the agencies for FGE Local 1975. I oftentimes requested meetings with Mr. Davis just to make sure I was in tune with what his concerns would be and his representation of the members. He's also requested meetings as well that I never turned down. And I always offered that I was available for monthly meetings with him just so that I could hear from him. We have a new vice president now who I've already met with twice, and I've also offered him the same thing, that I'm willing to sit down with him as well on a regular basis. I do want to say, yes, it is hard to hear the statements from the team that have worked at the DMV. And I can say that we are hearing them and their individual concerns, and even if there's others out that may have similar concerns, and that we are committed to hearing them out. In fact, I'm currently going on a director's tour. I'm in the middle of it right now, where I'm going to every location myself and talking directly to the team. And there's other senior leaders that are sitting here right now that are preparing to do similar tours throughout the agency, so we can hear directly from the team where there may be things that we might need to be aware of that we can only hear directly from the team. So I take what they're saying seriously. I'm not suggesting that I agree with everything in the way that it's been presented today, but I do take everybody's position seriously and look forward to making changes where I can to ensure that the team is overtly aware of what we are doing when it comes to discipline.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think, this is my 10th year on the council, and I've chaired a couple of committees here. I will say whenever it's happened every now and then, when at our oversight hearing, there's actually an entire panel of employees coming, talking about challenges, talking about frustrations, talking about the workplace. I think we want to take that very seriously. I appreciate your commitment to do so. I would recommend that in other agencies I've seen, not having a meeting be based upon a request, but just to establish a standing monthly meeting, something that allows both leadership and management to be able to plan around, as well as for labor to plan around. What do you think about that? Would that be a way that we can set a regular time, which both I think empowers and enables you and your team to be able to know you're coming into that space, as well as for labor?
Again, I have done such a request, and I'm willing to make that request again and to set some type of regular cadence. And I'm definitely willing to be a partner with our union friends.
Yeah. Thank you. I likewise know that I don't expect that everyone's going to agree on every single issue and every single item there, but I think that kind of standard regular meeting would be helpful. And I've seen it before in other agencies help kind of work through some of that. Again, not going to have every single person agree with every decision that you make, of course, but I think that's a good one. I appreciate that. What is the process? Well, I guess we have the two contracts. We talked about the comp plan, which is not negotiated with the DMV. But when the other one is expired in 2010, which spoke to working conditions, is that a contract that the agency wants to renegotiate? Or are you okay with where it stands as
So
well?
I'm okay with the current contract. Again, contract negotiation is held by OLRCB. Of course, agencies have input in those talks, but they're led by OLRCB. But as it stands, I'm not at odds with the current contract.
Okay. We heard from Mr. Gibson and Commissioner Groth, and I think I saw your team already exchange some information to work on this. Based on what you heard, is there an issue around a secondary identification or document? From what you heard, were you able to identify what the barrier or problem might be there for Mr. Gibson?
So I can't give a specific answer, right? Because I wasn't there on the day that the witnesses were at our locations. I will say, as I was listening to the testimony, particularly where we have the caregiver for the ANC commissioner, the residency certification form should have sufficed. That is what the form is for, is when someone is living with another individual and that person can certify with their documents that you're living there under penalty perjury of law. So when I heard that case, I'm thinking there is a process for that situation. There wasn't something new that needed to be done. I just don't know the particulars and specifics about the particular case, although, I mean, I'm happy and my team have already, jumped into, providing contact.
At this point, Commissioner, I'm happy to follow up afterwards, but this is the government portion. I'm going to stick with the director, but thank you. And to the team members who already reached out, thank you. I would love to also, if you can have your team report back, kind of what is the resolution? Obviously, it's not going to happen in the next 30 minutes, but when you get a chance to do that, it would be grateful for us to hear if we're able to solve that. And if there's a barrier that we didn't see or hear about here, I'd like to know it too, so we can help understand how to work through something like that.
We're happy to talk individually on the individual cases.
I appreciate that. And then similarly, I know your team's already following up as well, so we can work with Mr. McNeil on that. With Ms. Dillevue, who had testified around data and selling our data. So she said that the DMV is selling our data to LexisNexis. Could you talk a little more about what your thoughts were, how you would respond to what you heard there?
So the witness, and I forget the name,
Dillevue.
Is correct that the government have legal statutory ability to, I mean, it's not something we talk a lot about publicly, but that data is sold to companies that qualify for it, right? There is a process and there are rules by which they can use it, right? So it's not sell the data and do what you want to do with it and display it wherever you want to display it. There are rules, particularly surrounding the DPPA, the Driver Privacy Protection Act, that governs how those companies, because they're subject to the same rules that I'm subject to, when they are allowed to give that information out and under what circumstances, right? And so yes, it is real and is not unique to the District of Columbia. But there are rules surrounding it, and I imagine individuals who are extremely sensitive about their information may want to withdraw in some way. There isn't a mechanism for that at this moment to, I guess, withdraw your information. I imagine, and I haven't done much research on this, I wasn't sure what her testimony was going to be about, but I would imagine the total withdrawal of that information from these aggregate companies could have repercussions for district residents in a number of ways where, you're trying to get a mortgage or you're trying to conduct some business where companies have a legal reason why they need the information. They all can't come to the DMV for it, right? So these companies act in that way where they can provide the information where they are legally allowed to. So I'm not prepared at this moment to get into, all the pros and cons of it, and not knowing what the testimony was going to be about. But in general, that's how the process
Yeah.
works.
Okay. And I do want to be clear, my understanding is yours as well, which is the district is not unique in this. This
That
is
is correct.
a relation there. From just focusing on the contract though, so two parts of this I wanted to ask about. If the district is selling that data to a LexisNexis or a third party, is there anything that we the district are receiving in exchange for that other than the price, the monetary compensation?
So we do receive monetary compensation. I imagine our residents receive the benefit more than, the district government
Well,
itself.
I know we're not gonna be able to explore that fully here.
Yeah.
I do want to try to understand that portion of it. But in terms of whatever the contract is or that relationship is, it's not like, is LexisNexis providing something directly back to the DMV, or is it we are purchasing and paying?
They are purchasing the data.
Okay. And then,
Under rules by which they
Yeah.
must follow.
and I guess my next question is, how do we, or who is the entity that evaluates if they are following those rules or if they are in some kind of violation of that rule? So if they use the data in a way that you said, hey, you're not supposed to use the data that way, how do we know that and who holds them accountable?
So that is the agency's responsibility. They go through an annual process to re-up their contract, right? So they're not doing this once and there's no more visibility. It is an annual process that goes through the director's office for review of their application, to review their compliance documents, that they certify that they understand what the rules are set out in our agreement, and the federal and local requirements that we have set in our agreement. And so that is an annual process that we go through each year.
And how do you evaluate how they use the data? Like, how would you, in other words, I'm genuinely asking, like, how would you know how they use the data, right? Like, how do we understand what they use the data for? Or is it a complete?
Well, their application, they have to explicitly say how they're going to use the data, right? Now, different companies use different data, right? You have individuals that are more interested in the individual data, and you have some companies that are only interested in the vehicle data. They're, depending on their vehicle model, you have some that may be interested in both. But their application process has to outline how they intend to use it. Now, we do have an auditing mechanism. I admittedly would say that we have not done a lot of auditing. It's been based on our understanding and knowledge of a particular violation when we have activated that option. And perhaps hearing the concern of the witness, it is something that we might try to beef up and seeing how I can make that happen with resources that I have today.
Okay. And how much, what is the value of these contracts? In other words, how much is the agency getting?
It's a per piece contract with the exception of vehicle. So
Per piece, meaning per piece of
it's a
data?
per piece of data, right? So, so I know who requested what. Like, so I can track it down if need be, because I know which company has requested what data. They have to make a specific request. And so it's not a value of a set dollar amount. It's based on the amount of data that they consume.
Okay.
So if you're doing individual data, they may not have interest in my entire database, right? Because it's going to cost them $13 a record. But you may only have an interest in, you're working for a particular company and you're doing monitoring of a CDL, say it's a trucking company, and you want to do monitoring of your drivers who have likely given explicit, authorization for them to use a company to check their record, meaning they have authorization from the individual to get it. That's not always how it works, but given this example, so they may only be interested in the CDL drivers for that company. Thus, they wouldn't buy the entire, database.
Okay.
So it's a
That's
per
helpful to
piece.
understand. So using the LexisNexis example here, they're not purchasing, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not purchasing the entirety of the DMV database. What they are doing is they contact the DMV, I'm assuming on a somewhat regular basis. asking for specific information.
That is likely how they're doing it. Most aggregate companies for identity
Mhm.
data are not interested in the full book of business. They could,
Right.
right? But that has not been the norm. The norm is you ask for what you need for why you need it, and that's what you buy, because you buy per record. Is not, now on the vehicle side, it works a little different. You buy the entire vehicle database that go along with it. But that is mostly for companies who are interested in, say, recall information. So a manufacturer may be interested in who have their registered vehicle for whatever make and model that they need to make a recall to. And so they want to get the information of those individuals so they can legally make sure that person know that there's something in their vehicle that they need to address.
But LexisNexis isn't a manufacturer, so they're just a data broker, right? They're just going to want to have all the data and then have other people come purchase it from them.
So again, there's two types of companies. Three. You have some companies that's only interested in data because that's their business model. You have some company that's only interested in the identity information because that's their business model. But you have some big companies that may do both. So that's the third category. I don't know what LexisNexis is sitting here.
Okay, got it. Well, I thought it was a really intriguing, and I appreciated her testimony. Something I have not looked a whole lot into either, and would love to follow up with you and your team afterwards to try to think through where it is or if there's adjustments that we should consider. I think I am interested in how do we help protect people's private information. What she described of individuals' home addresses and the type of doxing that can take place, we don't want to be a part of, obviously. And so try to think about that. So I look forward to having a conversation with you later to see if what we can learn and figure out.
I welcome that, and I can tell you that the strength of your conviction is no greater than mine when it comes to the privacy of PII.
Yep, appreciate that. And then we also heard from Mr. Bergman, who talked about the renewal process for residents over the age of 70. So I'm going to take it that your team heard that feedback about some of the challenges around the way the documentation has to be submitted. I don't know if you had any reaction. I want to give you a chance to respond to that testimony.
I'm happy to take a look at that submission process. I'm not sure which system he used because depending on your condition or the way you want to make a request, it may be a different way that you come in. And so we will review both systems for redundancies where it might be more complicated than it may need to be. We're happy to review that.
Okay, thanks. And then he touched a little bit on, I think, on the medical improvement program. Is there anything that jumped out to you in that regard?
Well, so in the District of Columbia, anyone over the age of 70 70 or more renewing must go through what we call a medical eye certification. Their medical doctor, and their eye doctor, both must certify, that they are, excuse me, is it just medical or both as well? They must certify that the individual has the faculties and the physical agility to drive or the visual ability to drive. We will not renew if that is not successful with your doctors, right? So the doctors must certify, and there's one of the questions on the form says, do you think this person can still, in your professional opinion, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not, but in your professional opinion, can this person still operate to drive? And both doctors must answer this question independently, because if either one of them say no, then it would trigger action on our part. Now, the one thing that caught my attention here in the testimony, the witness spoke about, he actually renewed at age 69, which meant he would not have encountered our system until 8 years later. So for me, what stuck out to me is that individuals who turn 70, right, at any stage of their 8-year period, if they turn 70, that we request this requirement of them, and then perhaps again at renewal. Now, I will say, because I have to sign each one of these letters, we get a number of professional doctors who see their patients just on their everyday, visit. Those doctors will use a system we have available and report someone that they feel doesn't have the ability outside of that renewal process, right? So depending on what the doctor says, the agency will take immediate action on those credentials or those licenses. We also get information from concerned family members and our neighbors. Now, the action we take is a little different when we get it from a non-medical professional. We may require then an individual to go and get medical certification and then bring that back to us for us to make a determination, do you keep your credential or not? But if a medical professional writes us and say, this is my patient, and they have all the information, and they say, based on this medical condition, it is my professional belief that this person should no longer operate a motor vehicle, we would take immediate action on that and revoke that license and give notification to the individual on their next steps.
Well, I thank you, and I appreciate you heard, because I heard the same thing of if you do that renewal at 69 and a half, do we want to have a system that's built to kind of come catch that in a little bit rather than wait the full time? I also heard Ms. Bergman kind of recommend perhaps it should be more frequent as well once you hit 70. I say that recognizing today is my father's 80th birthday. And I don't know if I want him renewing once every 8 or 10 years. I might want him having to get a check more frequently than that. I know he won't like that, but I think that's probably in everybody's best interest.
Well, I do want to also say that it's not just the renewal that could trigger these things, right? Many individuals of 70 and older may have already have health challenges, right? Which is why the requirement is there. A doctor can make, during that same form that we're talking about, the medical I form, a doctor can say in that form, I want you to come back and see me in 2 years for the explicit purpose of retaining your license. So the system is broader than what we're talking about. We're talking about a specific renewal process. But during that same process, the doctor could say, I want to see you every 6 months. And you would have to bring to DMV a new updated form from that doctor every 6 months or every year, every 2 years.
It sets the floor, not the ceiling.
That's right.
So it can be more than that. Yeah.
So, we're talking about this in these segments, but the system is far greater than what we're talking about.
Yep. Got it. Thanks. And happy birthday, Dad. All right. Let me switch gears to a couple other items I want to start digging into. Let's talk about Vision Zero. I think oftentimes when we think about our Vision Zero efforts in the city, we focus on the Department of Transportation, we focus on the Highway Safety Office, but I think over the last several years, you've really talked to me about how the DMV is part of public safety. It is a public safety agency. While I think the DMV is probably more of a mission implementer of some of the Vision Zero elements, I want to give you a chance to talk about how do you see the agency's formal role in the city's overall Vision Zero efforts, either as it is or as you think it should be?
Well, thank you for the segue. So this is a big deal for me. The DMV is a public safety agency, right? Most individuals judge us only on our customer service and our swiftness of doing business, and that's important, right? But our mission is the safe operation of motor vehicles and public safety. That's in our mission. And so Vision Zero is a part of DMV's mission in the sense of Vision Zero focus on education, engineering, and there's another E I can't think of at the moment. What is it?
Education.
Enforcement,
education, engineering.
Enforcement, I missed enforcement. So enforcement, education, and engineering. DMV fits solidly in the education portion of it. And so that's where we, kind of place most of our efforts in, is helping the public understand things that they may not know about. So we do a really good job putting out information in our newsletter that reach a very large audience of nearly 500,000 subscribers. As you heard in my testimony, our social media presence is growing every year. We also have put Vision Zero educational material on our mobile app, which is used a lot, where individuals go and view these educational videos on our mobile app. And then, of course, we participate in a number of the task force, I think a number of the task force that have been created, particularly surrounding roadway safety. The DMV sit on many of those task force to give information. And then, of course, we train new drivers as they come on board. So you heard me talk about the boot camp prep that we had for young drivers ages 16 to 21. That's an effort to know that we have a novice driver that's about to enter the roadway, and how do we do more to try to engage them, not just say, hey, here's the test, pass the test, and here's the credential, but what can we do more to give you resources to ensure that you're really prepared and understand what you're about to do and the importance of it. So many of the cohorts that we had during the summer, I went down and spoke to each cohort except for maybe one that I wasn't available to talk to. So another senior leader went down and did that in my place. But I went down to talk to them and to let them know the gravity of what they're about to do. I mean, you literally can impact someone's life by being behind the wheel of a vehicle and not pay the kind of attention that you should give it. And so that's where we feel we sit, is in the educational part of the 3 E's.
Thank you. Does the DMV have anybody who sits on the major crash review task force?
We do. We have a seat on that. Now our person that had been on the task force for years just was hired by the office, the Highway Safety Office, I believe it is, or Vision Zero office, one of those offices. And so right now, my special assistant in my office sits on that task force until we have a permanent replacement. But yes, we participate in that meeting.
Okay, good. One of the things you and I have talked a lot about, both as we work through legislation and then through oversight, is around where we have the intersection between the DMV, the courts, and the Attorney General's office when it comes to DUI convictions and impaired driving. We both spent a lot of time together following the horrific crash in Rock Creek Park, trying to think about how collectively we do better, as well as how we improve the communication that takes place across the region and within these different pieces of our system. Want to see if you could talk a little bit about how has the communication between the courts upon a conviction for DUI and the Attorney General's prosecution improved with DMV when it leads to a suspended or revoked license and actions, and help resolve some of what we found immediately in the aftermath of that crash, where information was not being transmitted and transferred the way that we would want it to.
Sure. I want to commend my team here, led by my Deputy Director, Darnell Fontaine, and my General Counsel's office, Pamela Washington, who's also here. They have worked very closely with the Superior Court officials and with OAG, where we feel that our coordinated efforts, I think all 3 groups have really been engaged to ensure that we work together to ensure this information is transferring the way it needs to transfer, and that we've gone back and done some cleanup work amongst ourselves, which is why you see some of the spikes in some of my numbers for FY24. That is the cleanup. That is the direct effort of some of us, this group of individuals getting together and finding out where we may have had weak spots, where our communication may have not have been where we wanted it to be, where we may have needed to update things that were not updated with charging codes and how they map to different violations, how the Superior Court, communicates to us, how we respond to them. All of that has gone on over the last year, and I would say that I feel like we're on the right track. In fact, the goal is to end with a MOA with the 3 of us so that we're not relying on 10-year-old emails to make who was responsible for what and when, and how we communicate with each other. We feel that we need a more official document. So I asked my team as they've gone through the process of talking to the other two agencies to say, I would like to end this with an MOU that outlines the three entities, our responsibilities, and it's gone very well. I imagine we will have an MOU. I will hope before the next couple months, if not before the end of this fiscal year. But it is ongoing conversations. We have a regular meeting to ensure that we stay on the same page. So things could not have been going better in the way that we're communicating.
That's good to hear. And is one of the things when we worked and tried to work with your agency and several others when the council passed the STEER Act was to also help support that type of improved communication and kind of report out of the information. So from your perspective, are there any other gaps in terms of what is being reported out? And what's in terms of communication and shared information between those three?
So I feel like there are no gaps. I mean, we've explored and left no stone unturned in our talks. And so if there are none to my knowledge where I need more assistance, I think all three parties have been very willing to talk about what we need to do together and our shared values.
Good. And from a budgeting perspective, were the ability to have your staff be able to direct that with courts, with OAG, those are costs you were able to absorb within the agency?
Can you repeat your question?
I'm assuming if you had staff doing additional work on the courts, the OAG, doing this communication and working all of this, you were able to absorb the costs within the agency?
Yes, correct. And so that's why you see in my numbers, some of my overtime costs is much higher this last year, is because we were doing that work.
Got it. Okay. And then you kind of previewed this. I want to make sure we kind of walk through it also for the sake of the public to see this as well. So one of the things that you talked about is a spike, and we're going to dig into that just a little bit. So one of the things that the agency is working to help get drivers with that history of DUIs, either operating their vehicle safely or off our roads. In responses to the agency or to the pre-hearing questions, you cited the reason for suspension revocation of a driving credential, 816 DUIs in FY24 and 234 since the start of the current fiscal year through December, essentially first quarter of FY25. That's a significant increase from 176 total in FY23. So the question, and you kind of previewed this, is the uptick in the number of DUI-related suspensions and revocations a result of increased enforcement resulting in a higher conviction rate in the courts than we had seen previously, or is it largely the result of that improved communications that's taken place between the DMV, the courts, and the OAG?
It's my understanding that the uptick that you're referring to here is largely the process improvements that are being made between the three agencies we just talked about.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then is there any related increase that we've seen in the interlock program as well? Or would we expect, because the interlock is looking at when a person is being able to get their license back after revocation, if you've seen an increase in the number of revocation suspensions now, you don't necessarily see the increase in interlock devices until a little bit after?
Well, so let me say it a little bit differently. So if you are a District of Columbia resident, and you have a DUI conviction, you are required to enter into the interlock device, right? So it's not a lag time because an individual would be able to enter into the interlock program as a requirement as right away after their administrative hearing process have concluded, or if they don't go through the administrative process, as you can see in the numbers, not many people are, they are still required to go to, so there's no lag time. What you're seeing is an increase in my revocation numbers is because of non-compliance with the mandatory interlock device. As I mentioned in previous hearings that I've had, if you are required to go into the interlock program and you do not go in, then you will be revoked indefinitely until you do.
Mhm.
So some of that uptick that you're seeing there is the agency taking action to say there are more people that should be in the interlock program that are not in the program, and we've taken action to remove their license from them until they comply.
Yep.
And that could be a lifetime.
Thank you for walking through that. And then while we're seeing at the DC level that improved coordination and communication with courts, OAG, and DMV, one of the things we saw, for example, with the tragedy on Rock Creek Parkway was that the driver also had a DUI in a different jurisdiction that we may not have been aware of. How has the relationship with Maryland and Virginia and any other jurisdictions been so that that information also is getting shared in a stronger way?
So I do want to say that my relationship was strong with Maryland and Virginia at that time, and it remains strong today. I think the difference that have changed for the District of Columbia since that time is our entrance into the state-to-state program and the driver history record part in particular. That allows us now to electronically send convictions between participating states, and Maryland and Virginia are a part of the state-to-state and driver history record program as well. So now their convictions that they send us are electronically included as opposed to the old paper method that we had before.
Exactly. And that's the relationship can be strong, but if we're not getting the data in the way that we can use electronically, it creates barriers. So that's really good to hear that that is now part of the electronic sharing of data. So good news on that. And hopefully what it means is as a region, we're all stronger together.
Absolutely. And that doesn't mean I don't get manual papers. It just means the mass majority, right? Because a state, in order to send me something electronically, must be both state-to-state compliant and driver history record compliant. Some states are only state-to-state and they're not driver history record, and some states don't have both. But 43 states now, in my testimony it was 41, but now it's 43 jurisdictions are in state to state, and many more coming behind with driver history record. So I think regionally we're better as a result of entering into state to state driver history record, and we nationally will be better as well.
Yeah, okay, good. And sticking on the theme of safety and Vision Zero and the work taking place there, as you noted, obviously education is a huge part of where DMV plays a role within all of that. Are we doing anything different when we see individuals, not on the DUI side, but are repeated speeding violations and citations? Are there any new efforts you want to highlight that the DMV is taking or that you want to take?
Well, there's two types of speeding. And so I try to, to make sure I educate the public when I speak on this topic, because there's speeding where you have automation cameras, which we have in the District of Columbia. And then there's speeding where an officer stops and pulls you over speeding. So for the automated system, the fine is, the way of trying to correct your action. I know the STAIR Act has a number of other components that's not funded at the moment that would try to do more with that population. But as it stands today, the penalty is the corrective action. When it comes to speeding where an officer has pulled you over, we have a system already in place with reciprocity with Maryland, Virginia, any other state for that matter, that if you are pulled over by an officer and you're speeding, then you will be assessed the appropriate amount of points on your license once the ticket is either paid or what have you. So we will assess the points and send it to your home jurisdiction, and of course assess points on district residents here in the District of Columbia, at which time if you reach enough points, you could be suspended.
Yeah. Well, I think that if we've got just since FY23, Virginia residents owe us a combined, they have a $1.2 million, 1.2 million tickets, excuse me, not dollars, 1.2 million tickets valued at $234 million in outstanding citations And Maryland residents have a combined 1.4 million tickets, owing the district over $280 million. I don't think the notice in the mail alone is going to get the job done. So I continue to think we've got to think strategically about how we use that differently, because I don't think that a car that's racked up $80,000 worth of speeding violations and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of citations has dozens and dozens and dozens of drivers. There's likely going to be one, maybe two people in that vehicle. I think we're well aware of the distinction between our automated traffic enforcement, which is looking at the vehicle, and the in-person citation, which is the actual driver where the officer is handing that ticket. I still believe we've got a lot more to do in that regard to get and target those dangerous drivers that are repeatedly on our streets. And I know you agree that we want to find ways to do that. It's the how. We got to get that done.
And I will add that the STIR Act also paid for OAG to have attorneys to go after individuals in other jurisdictions. And we've been working closely with the OAG to figure out what information they want from us and how they want it, so that they will have what they need to paper a case properly and to do what the STIR Act intended for them to do. Those conversations are going very well.
Yes.
And we're working with them hand in hand to provide them with the information that they need to effectuate that piece of the STIR Act.
You have been, and thank you. I know in my conversation with the Attorney General, I don't want to break news today, but we are close to seeing the Attorney General roll out some pretty strong enforcement actions that'll take place, and that's in partnership with the DMV, with the collections unit over the CFO's office. And so I am looking forward to the news being made at some point as we go after folks that are making our streets and roadways dangerous and hurting our residents, hurting our city. So one of the questions I was going to ask also on our education piece is, according to responses in January last year, so about a year ago, the automobile driver manual was updated. Can you outline the changes in that manual? What changed last year? Anything significant within the driver's manual?
Sure. So the driver manual, which everyone used to take the knowledge test, was updated. It hadn't been touched in a very long time. So we needed to add information into the manual because, the devices that DDOT use on the roadway, we needed to update some of the things so that people know what a hawk signal is, different apparatuses that they're using on the roadway to ensure that they are aware of how to respond to those hawk signals and other devices. I'm using hawk signal as an example. So we updated information relevant to what people would see on the roadway in the District of Columbia. We also went through a series of just updates to make the manual more reader-friendly, to reorganize the information, interactive videos, so that when we talk about a particular topic in the manual, you not only can read it, but you can see what, a video of what we mean, and you can, while you're on the electronic manual, press it and play the video right there for you. So we've done just a number of things just to make it more friendly for the public, to ensure that not only are they reading it, but maybe give them an example where it's appropriate so they can understand what we mean.
Got it. And we heard some testimony earlier today that the manual is not available in the service centers, that you have to go to the library or print it at home. Is that correct, or do we have some printed manuals that we're able to provide at our service centers?
We do not have printed manuals, and it's a part of our government cost savings. But we have not had printed manuals, I would imagine, for at least 10 to 12, maybe more years. Individuals who want a printed manual would use services like their own printers if they have one. And the library is suggested for individuals who may not have one, but you don't need one. The manual is electronic, and you can study. In fact, the new manual, I think, serves better to read it online or even on your phone, because it's in our mobile app as well. And it is one of the most used features in the app, where individuals do read and use the driver manual right from their phone. So it's not a requirement that it needs to be printed, but the library is sometimes suggested for individuals who may not have any of those other options.
Okay. How many pages is it?
I don't know.
I think I heard 180 or so.
Okay, 120 pages is what I'm
120,
hearing.
okay. It might be worth having a couple copies on hand in the service centers. I think you're right. I mean, the vast majority of folks are gonna use the tools you got, right? Use those online tools, those video tools. It might be worth having just a couple of copies on hand for folks who need that. I wager it's not a large number of folks who are looking for that printed off copy, but just from an accessibility standpoint, it might be a good idea. I'm going to turn to a different topic. Can you give me an update on the status of the Department of Motor Vehicles Electronic Proof of License Permit or Identification Amendment Act of 2001, which is going to require the DMV provide electronic licenses, permits, and ID cards?
Well, I think I read it a little different. It's not a requirement, but giving us the authority to be able to do a digital license, but not a requirement that we had to, but I will have my general counsel reread that. Now, as an update, the district DMV wants a mobile driver's license. We want to provide that option. We want to provide that service. We continue to work with the industry through our membership with the American Association of Motor Vehicles Administrators, of which I'm a board member where we do get to interact with industry partners who are developing this technology. So we are well aware and working through how we can make this work in the district. One of the big barriers, I guess, for the agency is that we are looking for additional funding. This is a new service, and it doesn't come without a price tag. And so we are continuing to partner, to see how we might be able to find funding either in our own budget or through some enhancement process through new budgets. So once funding and other mechanisms are kind of figured out, then the agency can have a more robust move forward.
Well, the fiscal impact statement for the law said there were sufficient costs to implement the bill.
I'm sorry?
The fiscal impact statement, which the CFO prepared with the agency, says there were sufficient funds were sufficient to implement the bill.
That's not true.
That is true.
It may have been true at that
impact statement
time.
says.
It may have been true at that time. I would have to go back, but in the end, more funding is necessary. Perhaps the agency thought that we had the ability to do it with our current resources, which is why the fiscal impact statement is what it is at that time. But after working with industry partners and understanding perhaps more what it would take to make this happen, it's not possible to do it without some additional funding.
So what would the official additional funding need to be?
I don't have a number. I'm happy to work with your office and provide more information.
Well, how do we know it's more money if we don't know what it is?
Well, I don't know off the top. I didn't bring a number to provide you today.
All right. So, but we have 11 states and Virginia and Maryland have already implemented this, right?
That's correct.
So this feels like the same answer from a year ago. Like why haven't we done anything on this?
I would have to refer back to my previous answer, is that we have been working in the background to understand the requirements, to be a part of the community conversation on it, and having to work with industry partners to try to get across the line. We are in conversation with many of the companies who are offering the service to see how can we be a part of it. But there will be some costs that I guess were unanticipated when this bill was written that we need to satisfy.
Okay, so what meetings have we been having then with the industry leaders in the space?
So we go to conferences. I have technical meetings with, I don't want to call any vendor's name out because I may have to go through some competitive process. So, but I've talked to almost every vendor at international conferences about what our thoughts are, what we want to do in the district. I've had individual meetings after conferences with the companies. I've had some technical meetings with some of the companies. We continue to try to figure out when we are ready and have some of the other funding issues resolved, how might we move forward? So those meetings are indeed happening on some regular cadence, but I can't strike, I can't move forward until I have satisfied where I have the additional funding necessary to move forward.
I guess I'm trying to find out what's changed from last year, because we had basically the exact same conversation, that we've passed a law, other states are lapping us on this. You talked about last year the concern around, listen, this is emerging technology, we want to make sure we get it right, working with agencies. It's the same answer this year, so I don't see what we've actually done in the last year to move forward with what the law outlined. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, the same work that you just mentioned continues. This is a changing topic. In fact, TSA just put out new rules that from a board meeting I was just at for AMVA, where TSA presented at the meeting, where the rules are changing. So when I say ongoing, it is truly ongoing because this is an emerging new. So when I talk to you next year, it's likely going to be a new version that as I continue to look for funding, I still need to keep up with what are the changes that are happening as I'm looking for the funding. So I still stay in the conversation, but it doesn't mean that the conversations aren't new. They are.
The nature of technology is it's going to always be new and emerging and challenging. So I don't know if I understand what's different this year compared to last year around that, or what will be different next year or the year after that, because the technology will always be changing. And if we haven't actually figured out if the agency and the CFO were wrong and the cost you said you could absorb, now you no longer can, but we don't know how much that actually is. It doesn't feel like anybody's
I
actually
don't have a
trying to get this
number to
done.
provide you here. I didn't say I didn't have an idea of what my request is. I said that I'm not prepared to give you a number here. I'm happy to talk with you and your staff and provide more details on what my specific needs are in terms of funding, but I don't have a number to provide here, nor do I think I should, given that I may end up in some competitive process.
I'm not asking you to give me a vendor's name, but it is, if you're going to ask for money to implement something, then we have to know what that is. Otherwise, we can't fund it.
And I have some quotes, but I don't have it to provide you here at this moment, is what I'm trying to relay.
Got it. Do you believe that we can actually implement this next year?
I cannot answer that until I can satisfy some of the questions that we just went through.
Do you want to implement this next year?
I made it clear at the start of my comments on this topic that the agency is very much interested in being a part of the digital community, and that has not changed since the agency pushed for the statutory change.
All right.
With the previous chair of the committee.
Thank you. All right, let's stay with technology then. So since the extensive rollout of the new ticket alert system, could you help outline a little bit, how do you think that's helped actually with some of our compliance? Have we found, for example, more residents are more promptly making payments? Have we found that actually they might be initiating appeals more quickly? Have we taken advantage of other options? How do you feel like this has helped get people more information more quickly, either to come into compliance, or if they're going to go through an appeals process, they can initiate that process more quickly?
Sure. I think the ticket alert system is one of the nicest systems that we have to alert people of tickets that they may have. I would say that I believe individuals who sign up for task want to do the right thing. Otherwise, they would not sign up for task. Individuals who have no interest in paying their tickets are not signing up for tasks. So it's hard to just say point blank without some real intensive understanding of is the system providing information to individuals to allow them to pay a ticket faster. I think if you wanted to pay your ticket, even before task, the information was there.
Oh, I agree with you that
Yes,
the people, the 117,000 people that have signed up for an account.
that's right.
I agree with you, are more likely the type of person who, I need to either write that ticket, pay it off, I want to initiate appeal. But have we, of that group, have we found that it actually makes any difference? Either they
Of
get
course, it
paid
makes a
faster.
difference. I'm a member of task, and when it alerts me, I mean.
Never happens, I'm sure.
I mean, I am, both shocked that I got an alert, but it does give people the opportunity to react quicker. It does give them information to say, you have received a ticket, you need to take action, whether that is to request a hearing on the ticket if you feel it was issued in error, or if you want to just pay the ticket to ensure it doesn't double. Of that community, I do believe those individuals are utilizing that service. That's what it was intended to do, and I believe that they are using it in that way.
I guess what I'm trying to find is, I tend to agree with you that that's what I would expect would happen.
Yes.
Have we had anybody be able to pull some of the data to kind of compare a control group and then this group to see, or are we seeing what we want to have happen? Those payments are made
We have
faster?
not done that kind of deep dive, although the data that we have provided during the oversight hearing shows, I think right now is a little skewed because there's more tickets out there, right? When we started this ticket alert system, we were issuing about 2.2 million tickets a year. We're now issuing over 4 million tickets a year. And so the percentages are skewed right now because the control population is much larger than what it used to be. So even though the percentage may be about the same in terms of people's timely payment, timely adjudication of a ticket, the percentages may not be changing much, but the numbers may be. And so, but to answer your question, I have not done that intensive of a review of it, but I think just on the surface level, anecdotally, those individuals using the program are indeed doing their service faster because they are aware of it faster.
I certainly hope that's the case, and my instinct would tell me that's what we'd like to see, and likely is what's happening. It could be, if you're able to ask, for example, the lab in the CA's office to take a look at something like this. It'd be interesting to see if we can identify what a control group would look like, and as we want to use our technology to help people navigate their city easier, are we seeing that people are getting those in? Again, I agree with you that the person who's going to sign up for the task system is likely the person who's paying attention when they get a ticket in the mail in the first place and wants to get that remedied.
They're also probably the people trying to avoid getting tickets in the first place. And then if they do get one, they want to know about it.
Right. Let me look to kind of continue on some of our adjudication piece. I want to look at some of the personnel a little bit. So as we look at our caseload and the citations resolved as quickly as possible, last year during performance and budget oversight hearings, we discussed the additional 25 FTEs, which would have brought the total number of hearing examiners from 21 to 42. You noted at the time, 25 hearing examiner FTEs allocated to support the district's automated traffic enforcement program expansion. And the DMV had already begun onboarding more than half those examiners and expected to complete the staffing of those positions in early 2024. So we're thinking probably spring or early summer 2024. According to the pre-hearing responses, we have 13 hearing examiner FTE vacancies. But what jumped out to me was that 6 of those have been vacant as of October 2023, 5 before the start of fiscal year in October 2024, and 2 since then. Why are we seeing long-term vacancies, some dating back to 2023?
So first of all, I would say the hearing examiner position is one of the more difficult positions to hire for. It is a technical position. Most individuals are attorneys. Is not a requirement. You don't have to be an attorney, but you do need to be able to interpret the law and apply it appropriately. So it is a more difficult position to fill. We also went through a little of a slowdown process because ticket issuance wasn't materializing as fast in FY '24 because not all the cameras have been released. And so we used the time instead to train our new hearing examiners that we did bring on board, who go through an intensive, training curriculum. And so that's why you see some of the positions that have not been hired since we haven't. I will say that of the vacant hearing examiner positions, that position is posted and does close on the 20th of this month, where we're trying to recruit all of those positions now that all of the cameras are out, all of the numbers are moving up in terms of issuance, and that includes the number of hearings that we're having. So those positions are indeed, as you look at the numbers, clearly some of them have been hired and they're no longer here either through resignation or removal. And so in the end, there is movement there, and of the ones that we have not had movement on, we are taking action now given the circumstance of the issuance.
Okay. But I'm specific to the position of vacancy since October 2023. Is there something unique about that FTE or that position as to why would be a year and a half with that position being vacant that long?
Well, it's just the process of, we went out to hire all of them when we first went to get the first cohort, right? And I forget exactly how many we brought on, but it was a good number of 18, 20 of them that we brought on at one time. We was trying to hire every single one of them. At the time that we brought on the 18 or 19, I forget the actual number, we did move our focus to continuously trying to keep that HR rec open, and we did bring on individuals, not in big cohorts, but in 1 and 2s. But there were some positions, since we did receive 26 or 25 at that time, that we have not had a chance to have placed anyone there, although the need now has changed. And now that the first cohort has moved on and most of them are independent hearing examiners, and continuing to make their way through their process of learning and engagement with the public, we are now moving forward to try to fill all of the remaining positions. So all of the PCNs have been a part of a job requisition. It's just we haven't been successful in hiring every one of them. And again, we're posting, we have already posted the position again, every PCN that we have in this category. However, I don't know if we will successfully hire every one of them.
Got it. All right, so PSA for everybody. Those job descriptions close the 20th of this month?
It's the 20th of February.
20th of February, all right, 10 more days.
Excuse me, wait a minute.
Nope.
Wait a minute. No, I'm reading, they have the interviews scheduled already. So the job posted on January 29th. It is a union position, so we're required to have it open for at least 10 business days. It closes tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
On the 11th, February the 11th, right? And we've already carved out time on our calendars to kind of start doing the first rounds of interviews between the 18th and the 20th. So I'm sorry, I'm reading.
All right, so folks got 24 hours.
You got 24 hours.
All right.
That's enough time. If you're ready, you're ready.
All right, we like
Let's
that.
do it.
And out of the 25 new FTEs, you said about 18 or 20 ended up getting hired?
I think we hired about 18.
About 18, okay. All right, and then that remaining vacant positions are the ones that are being advertised currently, correct?
All of them,
All
because
of
we've had other hearing examiners who may not have been a part of that group of 25 that may not be here with us for whatever reason. So all PCNs that are associated with the hearing examiner position have been posted and will close tomorrow.
Got it, okay. And then as we looked at our overall caseload, so these are significant caseloads, right? So last year you talked about the fact that they can handle up to 13,000 cases sometimes per year. In the pre-hearing responses this year, you said the average caseload was about 10,000 cases. When we looked back over time, when we talk about closing out our cases from filing to final order, in FY '21, we were at 31 days. We're currently at about 98 days. So help me understand a little bit around our staff have a smaller caseload from 13,000 to 10,000, but we're going from 31 to 98 to close them out. Is that a function of volume of tickets? Is there something else going on? Can you talk about that?
COVID-19. I mean, when you compare anything in FY '20 and '21, you must factor in COVID-19. That was when a time where ticket issuance was severely reduced, which meant new caseloads were severely reduced. And we used the time during COVID to clean up all backlogs. During COVID, we had zero backlog at one point in time. So the number that you look at in 2021 is not a normal, typical number because we wasn't dealing with a backlog at that time. We were
What
only
was our
dealing with the
caseload
current.
in 2021 then, so we can try to compare apples to apples. Our caseload in 2021 was about what?
What number, can you tell me what number you're looking at in your questions? I believe you're looking at questions. Are you?
No, because I don't have it organized that way in front of me.
Okay. So I don't have the caseload of a hearing examiner in front of me at this very moment, but you mentioned the turnaround time and the time that cases are heard. So hearing that, and you mentioned 2021, hearing that, I immediately think about COVID-19 and the impact that had on the overall operation in the sense that during COVID-19, when the team was working either remotely or we was not taking many in-person hearings, we were able to really work through. So the caseload went up because they did not have in-person hearings at that time. In-person hearing takes more time, right? Because the individual.
So here's the part I'm trying to make sure I go through, and just for reference, and so it was answers to I think number 52. There was a table in response. So if I look back at FY '21, the mean caseload for hearing examiners was 7,697, and we were looking at about 31 days. The following year, the caseload goes up to 10,000, and the time to resolution goes up to 83 days. But then, at least according to the table, the caseload has dropped significantly down to about 3,000, so even less than in COVID, and is now at 101 days. Now, maybe there's something else going on in this table, and we need to find a follow-up after the hearing to figure that out, but that's what jumps out to me as I'm seeing a caseload go down and a time to resolution go up.
There must be some interpretation of the data that is not correlating, and I don't have what you have in front of you, so I can't really.
Well, this is from you, so.
Well, it's from me from 2021.
No, this is what you sent
From,
in response to these questions.
can you refer me
Okay.
to what question you're referring to?
Well, if there's something off on the table, we can certainly follow up and work with you on that. I'm comparing question number 54. And I'm looking at, because we keep the agency's responses year after year. So I'm kind of comparing the table.
Okay,
If there's-
I'm on question 54. Can you tell me what part of the table? Because
The table
54 is
under
like a
the
3-4 page table.
mean length of time required to close a case and the mean caseload per hearing examiner.
One moment, please.
And this is last.
Now, and I'm assuming the number where you say that there was a drastic reduction, you're not looking at FY '25, which is not a complete year.
Correct. I'm comparing your same responses from a year ago to the ones that we have this time. And I realize doing this in real time in a table is going to be a little challenging, so we can certainly follow up after the hearing.
I'm happy
But
to
I'm
take
trying
a
to let you know
follow-up question.
what I'm looking at is a table where the caseload goes down, but the time goes up. Now, it could be that there, like you said, there's something in the data not getting transmitted the right way. So we can follow up afterwards, but I just want to note for you, the flag that's jumping out in my mind is, I feel like I should be seeing that time go down if I'm seeing the caseload go down.
I am happy to discuss this with you. I think I have found some of what, but I'm happy to discuss it with you offline. I'm sure there's no hearing examiner on my team would say that their caseload has gone down. And so,
Just going off the data that was sent
I
by the
mean,
agency. So-
and that's indicative of the numbers of hearings that we've had as well. So, you know, Mr. Davis is a hearing examiner himself. I know under no circumstances will he tell me that their caseload has gone down. I think the last conversation he and I may have had was about their caseload going up. So we're happy to go through some interpretation of what the caseload is and take those in some post-hearing questions.
That sounds good. We'll go through that. In addition to looking at the adjudication, so the DMV employee seat on the Traffic Appeals Adjudication Board, has it been, it looks like it's been vacant since as of November. Has the DMV identified a replacement for that?
So we have one appeals board and there is a DMV member that sits on that board. We are trying to, and we have posted the position to start a second appeals board because the numbers for appeals, now that issuance is going up, adjudication hearings are going up, so appeals are also going up. And so we did receive one FTE, which will make two people because they're half positions on the appeals board. And that position was posted on February 7th and closes on the 13th, where we are looking for two individuals. One would be a DMV citizen member. One would be an attorney citizen. And if we don't get anybody, we will seek potential help from OAG. But we're looking for a attorney member. And then once we satisfy those two requirements, we will appoint a DMV member as well and start that. Okay. So that, I would imagine by the time we talk at the budget hearing, I will likely have established the second appeals board.
Does the,
Well, assuming when we have the budget hearing, I don't know when that is. So let me not
Oh, we'll
put
have one.
myself
I
in
know-
a,
I
let me
know how
not
much
put
you're looking
myself in a
forward to it.
bind.
When we have the board, when it meets, are they able to meet a quorum? Even though we have the two positions being advertised right now?
So there would be two separate boards,
Mhm.
right? We have a full board today.
So there's not a vacancy on there today?
There's not a vacancy on the current board.
Okay,
We're looking for another DMV
Got it.
appointee once we filled the two other required positions, one being a citizen member and one being an attorney member.
got it. Okay. Let me move to another topic we wanted to touch base on because I want to make sure I give you a chance to address this. There had been previously some media reports that I want to make sure I give you a chance to talk about regarding agency adjudication services practice. At the time, the article said there were 7 current and former employees who discussed what they framed as a predatory system at the agency where hearing examiners are encouraged to hold drivers liable for parking tickets that should be dismissed. In the media story, the hearing examiner noted they'd witnessed several red flags in the training process. We'll give you a chance to respond to that since I don't think you've had a chance to respond to that.
So this media story started when there was a morning meeting with our hearing examiners about adjudicating particular tickets that they had questions on. And the supervisor gave them information on how to receive a ticket facsimile, meaning usually when people are adjudicating parking tickets, they oftentimes will upload a copy of the ticket, send in the ticket. You know, we will have the ticket in front of us, right? But in the case that they don't do that, so that we can see what the government presented in their evidence, which is the face of the ticket, we have what's called a ticket facsimile, which is nothing more than a copy of the ticket. But I can't regenerate a copy of the ticket in the sense that people think a copy because I don't have the actual ticket. So what the system attempts to do in order to generate that is to use what we call the facsimile system, where it goes to the database and pulls the information that the government put in the system, because it was an electronic handheld ticket, because we're talking about parking tickets right now, all right? It goes to the databases and pull the select information that filled in all the blanks for the tickets. In this meeting, it was pointed out by, I believe, a hearing examiner that the facsimile did not have the officer's badge number or name. One of the fields were missing. If that was missing on the actual ticket, then that ticket should be voided, right? Whatever that piece was. But in a facsimile, which is not the actual ticket, it should not be voided because it was there for the actual ticket, but we have a technical issue where one of the fields did not return, but the information was there. We were trying to relay to the hearing examiners for this example was that given that we have all the evidence and the field did exist in the database, so we know it was on the ticket because the only way we have it is if it's there, but it did not fill in on the copy or facsimile tool so that they can have something in front of them so they can see the government's data. That is where the issue started. They understood that to mean that if that piece of data was missing, then where it would otherwise be dismissed, we were given the managerial direction to uphold the ticket. That's not the case. We were saying in the case of the ticket facsimile, if it didn't return for this period, and then we went and fixed the system. We were like, we don't want you to have to deal with that. But once they brought it to our attention, we gave clear instructions, and maybe it wasn't clear. Maybe that was the issue, right? And I would take some, managerial onus on that. Perhaps we did not explain that as clear, right? Because I believe I have a very proficient team that want to do the right thing, a team that is very interested in doing their job right and well. But I do believe that this issue that the media decided to pick up on, which we did explain to the media, by the way, the exact same thing, that this facsimile is not the actual ticket. It is trying to be a copy of the ticket in the betterment of them doing their job. So that's what that is. But under no circumstances would I approve any of my leaders to dictate a hearing examiner upholding a ticket that would otherwise be legally invalid. I actually, in my tenure, have tried to take steps to say, if I know that it should be invalid, to just not put it in front of the hearing examiner. And so I've taken steps like that I can point to say, I've tried to remove volume out of your workload where I can have an automation just remove that ticket because I know it's invalid on its face based on the evidence that's been submitted electronically. And so it's a misunderstanding that the team had that went to the press. I will be meeting with the hearing examiners on Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, one-on-one with me and during my director tour that I talked about. Their time is on Wednesday at 8 a.m. So I look forward, I'm sure this is going to come up, to see perhaps where the communication went wrong, how might we communicate better so that we don't have these instances in the future. I would have loved for an individual, a concerned individual to contact my office. I get emails from hearing examiners and other direct employees all the time if they thought they were receiving just wrong information from one of my leaders. I will happily take an email and respond. I respond to every email that I get from my team. And so, but they decided to use the media. I mean, that's okay if that's what they thought was the best avenue. I would prefer a different route, but that is what happened. That is how it went. And I'm happy to explain it to the team on Wednesday during their meeting and to explore ways that we might communicate better with them in the future.
Yeah. Well, glad to hear that's coming on Wednesday. One question I had to understand it, not being a hearing examiner myself. So can you help me understand what you're talking about, the facsimile and a missing field? In other words, if I'm a hearing examiner, I'm reviewing that ticket to go through adjudication process, is the only information that's presented in front of me that facsimile, which might have had that missing field? Or did I have an opportunity to remedy that information somehow and I had the original as well in front of me? In other words, if I'm here, how do I know that that field is just the facsimile didn't catch it and that's why it's blank versus
Well,
knowing that it exists on an original?
Which is why it was a question in one of their morning meetings, right? Hey, I'm seeing this when I pulled the facsimile. It's missing there. How should I take that? That's where the instruction from management came when we did our investigation and review of the issue that they brought to our attention. We took it seriously, reviewed the matter, understood what was going on, and gave instruction, right? But it was never instruction to uphold a ticket that would otherwise be invalid on its face. So would they have that same information available once they go in the system? Yes, they will have the information available to know that that field was populated. It just didn't come on a facsimile.
And that's in which system?
That's in the ETIMS.
ETIMS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same system that the facsimile comes out of. That's why I mentioned in my statement that we understood that there was one field that just wasn't coming from the database and populating the copy. But it existed in the database, which means we know it was on the face of the ticket because it would not be there if it wasn't on the face of the ticket. So that's why we were given instructions to say, hey, this field is populated in the system. It could be verified in the system, and you should move forward with the proper adjudication of that ticket and not do an automatic dismissal, which is what I think the question was in the meeting. Should we just automatically dismiss it because the facsimile is missing this field? And the answer was no.
If I'm a hearing examiner, if I see missing fields that should be there, is the training that every single time I need to now go back and try to track down the original document? Or is it that when I see the required fields missing, I dismiss and move on to the next thing?
This is an isolated issue. And so we have to deal with isolated issues and give instructions on isolated issues. So I can't say I have a standard operating procedure for this, but this was brought up in a morning meeting. So the DMV opens an hour late on Wednesdays. We use that time to congregate and talk about things that we need to talk about together. This came up in one of those meetings that, hey, I'm seeing this. How should we handle it? We responded to that. We're happy to put it in writing to ensure that if indeed the facsimile is missing one of those pieces of information, use that information to go, because that's what it's for. It's just a tool to go get you to where you need it to be in the system. That's what it's mostly there for. However, the information on the face of the ticket is important. And if a person has sent in a copy of the actual ticket and that field was missing, that ticket should be dismissed. But in this case, we were talking about a facsimile pull of the data for their use to kind of aid them into getting to where they need to be in the system.
Okay, so the training is that if I have a facsimile in front of me and it's missing a field, I am then to go start pulling the original document. I don't work off that facsimile.
I mean, I'm not developing training material on the dais, but what I'm saying
just
is,
asking what it is.
I will be happy to clarify this even further, but that's what we did in the meeting, but probably didn't do it well. And I've, agreed that perhaps our communication wasn't what it needed to be. And we're happy to revisit it. In fact, we'll revisit it on Wednesday when I'm there.
Got it. All right. I look forward to hearing how that goes too. Thank you. Let me move to a different topic. Since we met last spring, the executive has restructured a bit. So we no longer have a deputy mayor for operations and infrastructure. So last year we had a DMW and no longer have that. What's been the impact of no longer having that deputy mayor's office on the DMV on things like ticket reciprocity and efforts? Because that was largely within DMW, was supposed to be working with different jurisdictions. Are there other functions that the deputy mayor for operations infrastructure worked with DMV that now is in it's housed differently within the executive branch? And what's some of the impact you've seen on that?
I've seen no impact. I mean, the executive office of the mayor has been quite supportive and continues to be supportive of the DMV now that we sit in the Assistant City Administrator's office. There's been no difference. I still speak to all my colleagues from Demois. As you see in my testimony, I still work with MPD, DDOT, DPW on a myriad of topics. In fact, we're still working on the STEER Act component that relates to stolen vehicles and tickets and consequences. I mean, that is a direct work with, my counterparts in other agencies and the Executive Office of the Mayor and City Administrators and the Assistant Administrator's Office. So I have seen no impact that I can articulate.
Okay. So who is responsible then for looking at things like ticket reciprocity with Virginia and Maryland?
Well, that was in the Demois, and I believe they were working through the Executive Office of the Mayor on that. I felt like there's been, and so the Executive Office of the Mayor through, I guess, Assistant City Administrator's Office, but it wasn't a DMV item. I was asked what was our current reciprocity status, how does it work, and they took it from there. So I did not see any impact and can't answer any further than that.
Okay. Kind of an intersection of that issue and the success of the state-to-state verification service you outlined earlier. Is there any way in which that state-to-state verification service aids in the DMV around issues like ROSA or ATE reciprocity?
No. That system is really about a driver license and about one identity, one credential, one driver history record in one state at a time. It has nothing to do with vehicles at all.
Not vehicle registration?
It does not deal with vehicle at all. It is strictly verifying that Gabriel Robinson lives in the District of Columbia. When I go to Maryland to move, if that was to ever happen, then they will pull my record from the District of Columbia with my application and will pull my driver history record as well.
Which would be limited to in-person enforcement, not camera, correct?
Yes. So camera enforcement, again, is for all intensive purposes of I guess for the listening public, is treated like a parking ticket. It's to the vehicle and not to an individual. However, if you got a ticket from an officer through the window, then through the state-to-state driver history process, then we're now sending your driver history with you when you go to another jurisdiction or when you come to ours. So if you were a bad driver in Maryland and Virginia, when you move here, we're pulling all that history with you where that did not used to occur. Individuals will have multiple driver histories in multiple different states where they may have lived because it was not. So you took your identity perhaps with you, but you did not take your driver history with you unless you have reached a point of some type of suspension or revocation. That would follow you. But if you had not reached the threshold of suspension or revocation, but say you had 4 points on your license, that did not come with you before. Now we're pulling all that when we pull your record from whatever state you're coming from and vice versa.
Which I think is great, but it does not capture or include vehicles that be registered in my name. So while if Charles Allen decided to move somewhere else, the driver, my personal driver information is going to transfer, but the vehicles that are registered in my own name would not?
No, we use a different system to help with not registration because, most other jurisdictions aren't concerned with your registration like we are in the district because of the unique situation that we're in. We're very interested in your registration because whenever a DC resident sees out-of-state tags parked on their neighborhood block and they can't get a parking space, that's where the ROSA kicks in, right? But that you have a bona fide resident from out of state visiting someone in the district, could be a relative that is ill, that, they need to stay overnight with them so that they can care for them because they're their day aide is not there, you know, at night. So the family has to rotate in and out to take care of an individual. But when you see that tag, you just think, I got an out-of-state person taking my parking space, and I get it. I've lived on roads where I had the same feeling. However, from the government, you know, lens, I understand that there may be reasons why someone who may live in Hyattsville may come in to take care of their DC resident mother who's of age and they need to spend the night there. Or you have just night aid nurses that may come in at night and they stay with their client throughout the night, but they're rendering a service to a district resident. So we're interested in registration for those reasons, primarily around parking, but jurisdictions that don't have this strong parking need that we have in the district, not caring much about your registration until perhaps you're getting pulled over or you're going through a toll lane. But outside of that, they're not that concerned with your registration other than do you have one or not. We use a different system called NVIDIS, which is the National Motor Vehicles Title Information System. Again, a system that we use through AMVA, which is a very critical institution that we use in all jurisdictions, for that matter, use to try to connect us together where it matters. But that system, known as NVIDIS, we use that to track ownership of a vehicle, not registration. Still not concerned about registration because none of the other jurisdictions really have a need for it like we do. But ownership of it, I have the ability to say when a title is presented to one of my, you know, CSRs on the front counter, we can then put that title number in the system and it would tell me that the title is an authentic title because it's the number that the previous state recognizes, it's in the name that they recognize, it's in all the elements are in place. And so it prevents us from titling, which we subsequently might register, but titling comes first. So it prevents us from titling a vehicle off of a counterfeit title, a car that may have been stolen. It will prevent that from happening. And it just gives me critical information when I'm enrolling a vehicle into my titling system. But I'm still not looking at registration because a vehicle can be titled but not registered at all. So that registration information is not there for these components.
Okay, different system. Speaking of registration, I want to applaud the efforts of the agency on fake tags, trying to curtail fake tags.
Yes.
So I want to give you a chance to talk about the new design for temp tags. You and I talked about this a good bit last year, and it's been a big issue in the city. So I appreciate the DMV's rolling this out. Want to add, if you can add a little context around the agency's goals with that modernization. What's the problem we're solving with this effort? What are some of the next steps to monitor the progress and make sure that it's working the way that you want it to?
Well, sure. So we know, looking at news media and work that's been done in a number of agencies, that the district has been concerned about the proliferation of misuse of temporary tags. I must say, to start off my comments about our initiative, most temporary tags are not issued by the District of Columbia. We issue a few hundred of these tags a year, right? Most temporary tags come from out of state because most DC residents purchase vehicles from out of state. And so as a result of purchasing a vehicle out of state, then that's where your temporary tag comes from. So the mass majority of a temporary tag you see in the district is not a DC temporary tag. But of the few hundred that we had, we still wanted to take action to protect the integrity of our system to ensure that DC residents or even out-of-state residents who buy a car in the District of Columbia could have a temporary tag that they can rely in and something that law enforcement can use to authenticate a tag on the road side. Now, we had this temporary tag, which is cardboard stock, which is what we used to use. We used to have to even write, you know, with magic marker information on it by hand. It's easily tearable and rippable. Like, it was just,
What could go wrong?
it's just needed some work, right? So My team here and Rakonda Cobb, I know you're not here, but thank you. And to our deputy director over there, we now have a new temporary tag that is rip-proof. It's all, as you can see, it's blank here because everything is generated at the counter and it's printed on the tag with a number of unique numbers. So it's not just some, number that just keeps going up one by one, but it's a randomized number that the system randomized for every tag, and it's more than one on the tag, so that law enforcement who have access to both can determine if the numbers are in sync, because no one would know since we randomized them. No one would know unless you have access to my system what those numbers should be. But we feel like it is a tremendous upgrade for the couple hundred tags that we issued at the DMV. It adds more security. It's easier to look at on the roadway. And we feel like it's a tool that law enforcement can use when they're validating temporary tags on the roadway when it comes to a DC DMV tag.
Excellent. Thank you for walking through that. I think that's a really good step, and congrats to the staff on working on that. I would hope that our colleagues in Maryland and Virginia also will come in line with that, because I think you're exactly right. Most of the illegal temp tags, and most temp tags in general, are not coming from the district. They're coming from outside. So I think it's a great step to control what we can control, to make sure that we've got our system there. But I wish that we'd see others take it as seriously, but appreciate that. And thanks for walking through that. You started holding up some tags. And so, I'm going to ask about another one. On April 15th, 2017, the law took effect for the district to create a We Demand Statehood license plate. It's been almost 8 years, but I hear there's some good news.
We have good news.
You're announcing statehood for the District of Columbia.
Well, we would love to have statehood as well, and we're working towards that. In the interim, that we have a tag now that we're able to make available to the public, which is a We Demand Statehood tag here. It is available today in all of our service centers. So individuals who are interested in the cause and want to reflect the need and the will of the District of Columbia residents, the tag is available.
Just recently, right?
I'm sorry?
Just recently, right?
Just recently, as of February 1st, the tags are now available for the public.
How many people have gotten them already?
I don't have that number.
All right.
There is a fee. See, okay, I'm gonna have to find how much. Okay, $51 application.
You understand
fee.
why we picked that number, right?
There's a $51 application fee with this. Of course, the normal registration. And is there an annual cost? No, there's just the one-time fee.
And
$26 display fee that you would
which
pay
is
each
standard.
time you renew.
right. All right. Why did it take 8 years to get that?
I want to talk about another tag.
Wait, no, we'll do that one too, because that's good to show off as well. Why did it take 8 years to get that?
So, I mean, the tag went through a number of variations of, something as critically important as statehood. The administration really wanted to get the design right. And it took us a little while to get there.
All right. There's no good answer why it took 8 years, but show off and brag on the next one.
All right, let's show off the next tag. So for the listening public, there was also legislation passed to create a pride tag to show DC's inclusion and for everyone. And so we do have what we like to call the Pride Lives Here tag, representing the District of Columbia. This tag is also available at all of our service centers as well. We think it's right on time, right before World Pride comes to the district later this year, that if you do want to show your pride, that this tag is available as an option. There's also an application fee and a display fee. $25 for the application fee, and then a $20 display fee that you would pay each year with your registration renewal.
Absolutely. And the law that created that license plate became effective on August 24th, 2023, just a year and a half ago. So I don't know why that one took 8 years. That one took a year and a half, but we are glad to see them out there. Encourage folks that want to use them, can find them on the DMV website. And I hope that we will see those across the roads and streets of the District of Columbia out there very soon. So excited that those are there now. Let me spend a few minutes on our IT and capital projects. This is going to come up in a couple of different spaces over the course of the day, but I want to check in on this as well. We've talked about this last year and probably the year before that. We have 2 legacy operating systems, the DMV, Destiny, and eTIMS. The agency's been working on these longstanding projects, working to identify vendors. What is the status of our Destiny upgrade?
Thank you. So the Destiny upgrade continues to move forward. I have seen demos of the elements that have been built out. The team is really pushing the metal to try to really update and upgrade the system. I will say that since we last met, that the date of release has been pushed out a bit. It will not be released later this year as anticipated. The new anticipation date is in 2027. As you likely know, our system is one of the largest technology systems in the District of Columbia. It is also the nucleus system for a number of other products that other agencies provide. As you know, with Board of Election, most individuals start their registration process at the DMV, updating the jury system. And then we've also had a number of updates in the system that was statutorily required that we do now. We couldn't just wait until a new system. So we had to build a number of things because we had federal and other statutory due dates that required us to build in the old system because we had to do it now. And so those include state to state, which we've talked about, driver history record, which we've talked about. We have not talked about EEE, which is the exclusively electronic exchange for information and convictions for CDL drivers. DAC, which is the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, again, for CDL drivers. If a person who has a CDL has a conviction or a drug and alcohol issue, that it has to be reported through this clearinghouse and we have to be made aware of it. We had to build that into this. Of course, we had the new credential design that we had to do a year or so ago. IID, which was a massive build out. Invitas, which we just talked about a bit on titling. All this stuff was just recently in the last couple of years built out that could not wait for, even as we were building the new system, we had to build it in the old system, which have caused us to have to push the deadline out. And then there are some new things that, of course, are imminent that we must still do now, such as the Intelligent Speed Assist program that we are in hot pursuit of right now. And then, of course, we have some revenue payment things that we are working on to change the way that we collect our payments with credit cards as well. So with all these things and not having a pause on anything, it really have caused us to have to push the out. But there is movement on this that I think the team will be quite happy once we are able to release it. And trust me, I want to release this as much as the team because I know they use Destiny every day, but so do I. And I understand some of the challenges that we have with Destiny that we want to remedy for the team. And so we're working with the executive branch currently on how this push out will work.
Thank you. I want to make sure we're clear. When you say what's moving to 2027, that's the release, in other words, the implementation of the new Destiny? Is that the release of the
Yes.
RFP? Is that an
No.
upgrade? Help clarify that.
So it's not an RFP. So as I've mentioned, likely in other hearings, we have a development team that sits at Octo And so it's managed by Octo and the DMV. But we have a development team that is earmarked to do nothing but DMV development, right? So there's, you know, two teams kind of working, one to sustain the current system that we have, and then a team building the new, but that's not, you know, the old team has all the knowledge about how things work. So whenever they're building out these new things that we have to do right now, then, you know, the new team that, you know, we're still hiring for at times, you know, don't have access to the legacy people like they may want to in order to keep things moving at the pace that we would like. But we have our own team, so we are talking about a release date in 2027.
Okay. So when we looked at the pre-hearing responses this year compared to last year, it's word for word the exact same answer. I think you just outlined several of the pieces that are being put in place. Are the additional things, the state to state, all those different elements, is that the reason why it's moving to 2027? Is it related to budget? Is it related to bandwidth? Why are we moving to
It's related to all those projects that were not anticipated when we came up with our schedule, right? So when we started the modernization schedule, we had what we needed to do with the current system. But then as new statutory requirements come online, then I can't not do those because they have deadlines that I must meet in order to keep my Real ID certification. And so I can't stop. So it's been a factor of adding new things that were never anticipated when the schedule was developed that I've had to react to. And normally whenever I build all these new things that I've just discussed, I'm building them in the old system and the new system at the same time. And that causes, you know, issues because one system is a mainframe system and one is a web-based system. And so now I got to work two teams on the same project, but two different totally systems, but with the same outcome.
Yep.
So with all of these increased items that were not contemplated during the initial design of the schedule is why the push out is necessary.
Okay. Now, some of those might be statutory. The state to state piece, for example, that wasn't from the council. That wasn't a statutory requirement.
That's a federal requirement in order for us to
So
maintain
federal
state to
statute.
state,
Got
in order to maintain our Real ID certification.
So you've got federal statutory requirements as well. What's to say over the next 12 months, we don't see other requirements come down the line, federal statute or here. And what I'm kind of getting at is how do we help, like I want to help you get this over the finish line. I know you want to get this thing over the finish line.
Absolutely.
What can we do or how should we prepare that the next 12 months could bring plenty of things that are uncertain that we don't know are coming to make sure that you're able to keep that 2027 deadline goal and it doesn't slide to 2028?
Well, I mean, we're doing everything in our power to not have more slippage, right? It's sometimes just the volume of what we don't know about what we don't know, right? So if it was just one or two of these, then I likely would still be on task and on target. But I'm talking about 10 extra things over the,
These guys are talking about all kinds of things of the number of volume of things that are going to be coming our way, some of which is going to land at you. How do we, I mean, they're talking about all kinds of things related to identification and all that, which I imagine could create new federal statutes that just keep sending new curveballs, right?
But-
how can we help you stay on track?
But
with that,
there's
which
a
we can't
difference
control?
between them changing something that tweaks a system that exists that's different than me building something that don't exist right now. When I talk about MVDAs, IID, state to state, driver history record, EEE, DAC, driver intelligent speed assist, these are things that did not exist. When we talk about some of the things that may be being talked about now, it's about tweaking something that I already do.
I'm not sure they want to tweak.
Well-
They seem to want to do some wholesale changes over
Well, that's correct. But it still will be inside of the system that I currently have. I haven't heard something yet, although I disagree with a number of the things, but they're not creating new systems from what I've seen. They are changing existing systems, which changes the way I react in the amount of time I need to react. But when I have a brand new system that, like intelligent speed assist, there's no other model in the country that I can even use to build that, right? I am trying to research, understand. It's a great idea. I mean, we're working to do it, but it is new completely. And so that takes more time for my programmers, my legislative team, everybody to kind of come up with something that I'm not pulling from another jurisdiction and kind of, tweaking a bit. I am really creating something from scratch, which other jurisdictions are calling us now to ask us some questions
We
about,
love being leaders.
about it.
We love being leaders on the
Yep.
front edge. All right, then let's talk about our ETIMS upgrade. So in your testimony, you said we are expecting RFP could be released by the end of this month. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's up to OCP, or that's up to you?
OCP.
Always a great collaborator with OCP. So they've canceled a bid before. There's things you can control, things you can't control. The things you can control, what steps has the DMV taken to be able to help make sure we don't run through that again? Because I think that was in 2023 when they initially had released it and then we had to pull it back. Is that right?
So you went 2 steps back. So we've had a situation about 2 bids ago where we pulled it back because we were getting so many industry questions that OCP decided that it was just not technically written well enough in order for there to be good bids. We pulled that back and we worked with OCP, Octo, my adjudication team, my technology team, to come up with a new RFP that was written differently, because we even hired technical writers to come in and help us write our RFP. We put that RFP out and we ended up with 1 bid, just 1. OCP and my team went through that bid, and OCP determined that the bid was not responsive. And so that then killed that particular RFP and solicitation. So now we're doing it again. And so that's what you're speaking of when I say that we are working with OCP to put out the new RFP. I'm getting some notes here that look like the RFP is pretty much done and they're getting ready to hopefully post it soon. We are looking to have a multi-year contract at the end of that RFP period.
All right. Keeping our fingers crossed. 3rd time's a charm. This one's going to be it.
5th, but yes.
All right. 3rd for me, 5th for you. All right. Let me turn to a couple issues more just in staffing and personnel. You mentioned intelligent speed assistance. So in our pre-hearing responses, you noted the program coordinator and program analyst have been added to the agency's organizational chart. Does that mean that those roles, the position descriptions and people have been hired into those positions, or you're in the process of hiring for them?
So the positions for both the coordinator and the analyst was posted on January 30th, 2025 and closes on February 13th, 2025. Of course, when we received the positions, we had to write PDs because they don't exist anywhere. So we had to write them all. And so we went through that process when we received the funding on October 1 of 2024 to start the process of writing, developing, and I'm happy to say that the team, my driver services team led by Marquise Miles over here, has been working really hard to write PDs for these positions, and my HR team, giving you guys a shout out. Thank you so much for getting that done, and the positions are posted.
All right. So this hearing's turned into a bit of a job fair. So these close on when?
I'm sorry?
These 2 positions close when again?
They closed on the day before Valentine's Day.
That's Thursday.
That's correct.
All right. So when everybody's sitting at home in the snow on Wednesday, they can fill out all their paperwork. All right, so we need to get those two filled. All right, then one of the things that jumped out to me in the responses back to the questions around new hires is that, and I don't know if this is typical or not, so I'm asking because I don't know the answer here. More than 50% of the new hires were listed as not DC residents. And I don't know if that's typical or not. I wanted to see if you knew off the top of your head.
So I believe that is question number, I'll tell you.
I think it was number 6.
It's question
Yeah,
number
page
6.
7, number 6, yeah.
So yes, so of the 45 positions that we hired, the continuing positions, 21 of them were district residents. However, I don't think that's indicative of all the work that we do. I mean, DC DMV has one of the highest, DC resident,
Right.
in the government. It's well over 50% of my total
Mhm.
population.
That's why
but
this one jumped out to me.
Well,
Like, was it,
well, yeah,
was it,
so
was it
we-
something about maybe this hiring cohort? Was it something different? Like what?
we have the same commitment that we've always had. This is how the cookie crumbled this time. We're always looking for DC residents. As you hear, we went to three, I don't want to say every, we went to 3 government hiring fairs last year. We did workshops with district residents on how to write resumes, how to handle questions, how to, do's and don'ts. Like we even are getting in the business of trying to help prep them for interviews, not just with us, but in general. So we've demonstrated we have a commitment to DC residents hiring, and that has not changed.
Okay. I know we also have, I think we have a vacancy for a human resources specialist position. Is that right?
Yes, I had a retirement, and so yes.
You got that one advertised right now too?
It is,
When's that closing?
okay, well, okay, it's that position for my HR. Let me find it. There it is. We have sent that package to DCHR to approve the post. So we have to build it,
Okay.
and then we send it to DCHR for review. And then once it gets approval, we post. So it's at DCHR, and once we get approval, we're ready to post.
Got it. All right. But we expect that to be coming soon.
I expect you're going to see a significant change in my position come budget, depending on when my budget hearing is. So if I get an early budget hearing,
Oh, I hear you lobbying for.
but if
All
I get a
right,
late
all right.
budget hearing,
I hear what you're laying down. All right. Hopefully just a couple of quick questions here. The one thing that also jumped out to me, this is on page 18, this is question 18. One of the things we always look at with all our agencies is trying to understand our different energy uses and projections. The electricity, so this is what DGS provides. So the electricity demand jumps dramatically from FY24 to FY25. Now, granted, we are in FY25, so I'm not sure if this is a projection from DGS at this point or not. But what do you see here? Why would we see? Because this isn't the cost of electricity. This is just the kilowatt hours, how many are used. What would help explain such a big jump?
I don't know. The number jumped out to us as well. We contacted DGS for clarification. We don't have a clear answer on it yet, but I mean, the same thing that you saw, I saw, and the team saw. My chief of staff, Tyrone Sweat, over here has been talking to the chief of staff at DGS so that we can try to understand what is this number right? And if it is right, why?
Yeah. Is there,
I don't have an answer.
I would say, is there anything that jumps out to you that could explain why you would all of a sudden be using twice the amount of electricity?
I don't have an answer.
Okay. I don't either. So my concern around it, of course, is this is how much DGS is going to bill you for electricity costs. And so we think about our budget for our agency. If DGS is padding up a huge electricity cost that actually doesn't turn out to be a correct projection, they're going to be sending a pretty big bill to the agency for your electricity costs. So I think we want to try to figure out why do they think it's doubling? Because otherwise, either they're taking money you'd rather have for something else. You identified a couple of things that might have a fiscal impact that you want to work on. So I'm happy to
We've
work.
started that process.
Happy to work with you on that and DGS to figure out that. For gas, it's not quite as dramatic, obviously, as the electricity usage, but there's also an increase there. So I think, want to work on that. So happy to work with you with DGS, understanding what they think's going on here. And I would agree with you. I'm unaware of what possibly could be going on that would warrant such a dramatic increase in usage. The one piece here on the last one, I would encourage us to think about, when one of the questions we ask is, so what are we doing to reduce energy? And the only thing really here is regulating temperatures when unoccupied, putting lights on timers. Anything else we can think about that we can do?
We're working with DGS on ways that we can conserve energy.
All right. I know at one point we had been talking about a pretty significant capital project that was potentially going to be housing a new DMV headquarters. Has that project just been put on hold? We're talking about the fire station and everything else next door. Feels like that's pretty much just on pause at the moment. Anything new from your end on that?
There's no new information on that front.
All right. I think it could be a pretty exciting project over there.
I have no new updates on that front.
All right. I think we ran through the rest of my questions along the way. I know we've got a couple of follow-ups that we can do with you and your team after the hearing to follow up on that. So I don't have any further questions at this time. So I think we're good to wrap up. I hear you talking about getting that budget hearing scheduled. So we'll work it to get that scheduled. You got it. Don't worry.
Take
We'll
your
make sure.
time.
All right, Director. This is going to conclude the committee's second performance oversight hearing on the Department of Motor Vehicles. I want to thank all our witnesses for their testimony, including Director Gabriel Robinson. The record for today's performance oversight hearing is going to close on February 24th. So anybody who wanted to submit testimony that weren't here for the public portion earlier, we can do that through the council's hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. Until then, on February 24th. The next scheduled meeting of the committee will be tomorrow, Tuesday, February 11th. I want to note we had initially said that we were going to be starting that hearing at 11 a.m. with the Department of Transportation, the Bicycle Advisory Council, the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council, the Pedestrian Advisory Council. Given the fact that we are expecting some significant snow, we've worked with the DDOT team. We're going to start that hearing a little bit earlier, so we're going to start it at 10 a.m. So we've gotten notice about that, but I want to make sure I make an announcement here. We're going to start that hearing at 10 a.m. tomorrow with government because we'd already done the public witnesses previously. So again, tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Department of Transportation. So there being no further business for the committee, the time is now 1:14 p.m. and this public hearing of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.